welcome to another episode of Talking Nerdy in the Bedroom with me, KJ. And I have a special guest that none of you have ever heard of before, but I have for many years. We have Dennis Delaney. Hi, Dennis.
Hello.
So, Dennis Delaney and I are part of, God, the amount of population that did e-federations or internet federations is probably significantly low, right?
I would agree with that statement, but that's just my small worldview. It could have been larger.
Yeah, I feel well in my worldview, everybody did them because those are all the people I like associated with. But I feel like the regular purview of other people have no idea what this is going to be talking about. So I'm kind of glad that this podcast is called Talking Nerdy in the Bedroom because it doesn't get much nerdier than e-fetting. So for the layman who has no idea, e-fetting is about wrestling, especially when wrestling was huge in the 90s and 2000s, where you would pretend to be either a fictional character or you pretend to be a non-fictional character that was in WCW, WWF/E, ECW, and all the independents, and then you would cut promos as them, which, yeah, sounds nerdy when you think about it. And then you had someone like Dennis who came along with Kevin, right? Kevin McDermott?
Yep.
Oh, God, I'm pulling that out of the memory. That created a special. I mean, you guys were ahead of your time when you first created Global Wrestling Federation, that we'll now refer to through the rest of this podcast as GWF. Like, what made you guys want to start your own federation, and how long were you guys role playing or creating these promos beforehand?
It started. So it started with Kevin and Bill Smith, who was around as a commissioner for a while, and a handful of the others. They all went to Fredonia State in kind of eastern New York, probably about an hour or so away from Buffalo. They all lived together, and they started it, and it was Grandpa's World Wrestling Federation, so it was GWWF for a little while. And I think they just started. I think they got into it in a different EFED, and then they said, "Hey, I want to do this for myself," and it really just lived there for a while as just something they wanted to do as an outlet for creativity. It wasn't pretty, but it was something.
It eventually became pretty. You guys became the gold standard for most of the federations that were out there.
I was so buried in it after a while, so I wasn't there from the start, but I was there soon after, probably the summer that they came home back to Buffalo. That's when I would have gotten more involved, and we would have started talking about, hey, can we make this look better? I mean, I can remember the background was called ICY, and it was just some stock Windows background that Kevin chose for whatever reason. It was some blue kind of like crumpled piece of paper. And I just kind of remember because I was doing more of the computer stuff, the web stuff at the time. So I just kind of started helping out in that manner. And then it became so much more. It ended up, it took on a life of its own because I mean, I can remember going to anyone's house, it was either Kevin's house or Bill's house, and there would be 4 or 5 of us around the computer reading role plays and deciding who beat who. Is this better than this? And actually having discussions about it. And it was a lot easier in those times deciding 2, 3, maybe 4 matches on a particular card than it eventually became. But it was kind of like our committee, and that's where we actually kind of really took off, just having fun. But yeah, I can remember those early days, and I guess as it became more and more, I was so buried into whatever became it. Kevin got too busy with school, Bill got too busy with school. They all kind of went on to different things, and I was still kind of doing my thing at home, ironically in the bedroom. It it was I knew I was getting a lot of emails from other people about, hey, can you help me? I want to start an EFED too. Can you help me? Hey, can you make this cool flash? Can you make a flash animation for my intro? Because that was the thing at the time. Everybody wanted something in Flash because I just sat there and made them. I didn't realize where we were, if anywhere, as far as being known or not known. Despite getting the takedown letter from WWF at the time, that was about the only time I was like, "Hey, we're actually something. Somebody recognized us." But in the scheme of EFEDs, I knew there were bigger EFEDs for created characters, where you really took your character to a different level, and we really stuck to that, um, real wrestler kind of mantra for as long as we could, anyway. Pretty much till I left, at least.
I feel like it's to harder to do promos of the people that are real because you have stuff to go off of to make sure that it's because one of the things for the listeners that you judge off of is if it's in character. So if a character like Stone Cold Steve Austin starts having a tea party and it doesn't really make sense for his character unless there's some story there, it's not really in character. Like you want to see him beer swigging, you want to hear the what's, you want to hear him tell his boss to fuck off, all that stuff. So those were harder, I would say, not only to write, but also easier to judge because you have a baseline to go off of. When I did the other EFEDs that had completely created characters, you could do whatever you wanted because you're making up your character as you go. And I felt like those were very hard to judge how well people did. So I gravitated to one of the reasons I gravitated towards a WWA, WDW, GWF, WME were like my big ones for many years because it was all real people. Now, granted, there were people out there that could take somebody like Pogo the Clown, who was a nothing character, and turn him into the world champion. You have another guy who I'm one of the guys that helped get me going in EFEDs, and also a person that I know reached out to you years and years ago about getting Flash videos. So it was funny that you mentioned that because that was the only reason that made WDW, World Domination Wrestling, stand out. And Mick Walsh from Ireland.
Oh yeah, I know that name. Yeah.
So he reached out to you to get like some of those Flash videos so that WDW could stand out compared to the other ones that are just, a plain background. And he had Crash Holly in GWF, who he eventually became like a world champion with. So it's not that you couldn't take these abstract characters and make them something. There just have to be, a story with it, which is, again, a lot cleaner when it's an only real federation.
I think there were some. It depends on the creativity of the person too. I can think there was one person early on, and I forget. I don't remember who they were. It might have even been a friend of Bill and Kevin, and they were Buff Bagwell.
Joe?
But he had Mr. No, it was or before that.
Oh,
he had Mr. Fuji as a manager.
Okay.
And it just took it into like it was Buff Bagwell, but then you threw in this Mr. Fuji character with it. And they took a creativity of just like, wow, that just okay, that's something you're not seeing on Nitro or Thunder or whatever it is. Yes, it's that character, and yes, as Buff is speaking, you're hearing his voice. I think the thing like it's hard to separate that when I'm seeing a character on TV every other week at least. I can't not hear their voice, and you're right. I couldn't hear not Steve Austin talking as Steve Austin.
Yep.
But when you threw in some other mix of a manager or a tag partner or something, I think that opened the door a little bit where you could kind of expand their character. Yes, you're still hearing their voice, but at the same time, it's a little bit different.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, creativity is the kind of the name of the game with anything that to do with e-fedding at all. because you're supposed to be, you don't want to just do copy and paste from the promos that you see on TV. And so many people, at least to begin with, when they're trying to learn, have done that. We've had to ban people before because literally they copied and pasted an entire promo from the show from like a year or two ago, thinking somebody wouldn't notice. Like, oh, it's no big deal. They won't tell that I took my entire promo from what he said on Raw that one time. So we've done that, but that's usually where people start out. It's kind of like almost completely mimicking them before, hopefully, as long as they're good, slowly branching off and doing your own stuff. Like the Mr. Fuji with Buff Bagwell sounds crazy when you just hear it off the cuff. But depending on how he did it, why he did it, how they interacted with each other, as long as both characters are interacting the way that you would think they would if they were on TV being grouped together, there should be no problem with that. And that's kind of what at least I tried to push for a lot of people. Like, you don't have to stay within the confines of whatever your character has done on TV. The character that I'm notorious for in GWF was Chris Canyon, who was a great wrestler, innovator of offense, had so many moves that he literally came up with, created. But he was also, which didn't know when I first joined as him, was a homosexual. That came out, and I did so much with that character in so many different iterations of him, of being just, denying that he's gay, being the man's man, going behind the mask as Mortis, coming out as a flamboyant homosexual, to then coming out and explaining, I just thought that's what the fans wanted to see, but this is actually who I am. And one of the reasons why I was behind the mask is because I was hiding from my true self and all this stuff. And you can develop a character over those years and over those promos and over those rivalries that you have that can literally change everything about that character. Like, if you looked at my character at the end of GWF compared to when I first entered, it's a completely different person. And that's really what you want for any character that you have. Because if you're just the same old Stone Cold that was, 1995 through 2023, you're going to get a little bit bored. It's going to become stale. Nobody's going to enjoy reading those. And I know, at least for me, in the early going of reading some of the role plays, I enjoyed it immensely, because it was like watching wrestling, but in my head. And I was picturing what they're saying and doing everything that was happening. But part of the issue is when you have to read so many of them and you just keep reading. And we were doing 2 shows a week and 1 pay-per-view a month. So you're talking about 9 shows. Each show had at least 4 matches on it. So at the bare minimum, that's 8 role plays per show. And then usually the pay-per-views had more. Oh, it's so much reading. And people just kept getting longer and longer and longer with their role plays. How did you guys handle the transition from like 2 or 3 lines, 1 paragraph of like a promo to what it eventually became before you stepped away?
It was pretty much. I don't think Bill and Kevin got a real taste of that, because I think by the time they stepped away full time, their life had taken over. School needed more time, and side jobs and whatever the case may be. So that was pretty much me. And you're right. It's rough because you have to put a deadline. So you have a Monday show, and I know when I was doing it, you could role play till 8 p.m. on Monday, and then you always have the person that posted like 8:03, 8:05 on Monday night, and then the show is technically we post the results the next night. So not only do you have stuff to read, but you have a very small window to do it in, and it was tough. Repeat that again for Thursday/Friday, and then repeat it again for a Saturday/Sunday once a month. It's a lot, and some characters were easy to read. Right? You're like, oh, wow, okay, this is good, and then you get the people that are like, man, I really put a lot into this. I really thought it was good. Why didn't I win? Well, I mean, I could have flipped a coin for that matter, right?
Yeah,
I had 2 really good role plays. what am I going to nitpick? Like, oh, he had a spelling error. That's it. Loses. What what I think for me, what I want to tell a lot of people is you got to really keep my attention. Like you got to remember, you kind of see this with any kind of boss. I got a ton going on. I can't sit here and deal with your little things. You really got to grab my attention. There's really got to be something that pulls me in. And I'm like, wow, that was pretty good. And I'd be like, okay, that it wasn't just a bore. Like, okay, I can write a long role play too and ramble on and on and on and on. But you got to have some meat on the bone there.
Yeah.
And then especially if it was some kind of title match, you really, like, in my mind, you really had to go up and beyond to beat that champion. Like the champion has the inside track. Like,
Yeah, well, yeah, they should at least for in the wrestling world, they have the champion's advantage. So it means they have to be pinned or submitted to lose the title. If it's
right.
a DQ, if it's a count out, if it's whatever, they don't lose the belt. It can be a draw and they keep the title. So I agree with you. Like I felt like if you were going to beat the champion, you have to beat the champion. If it's close, you might win, but it's going to be a DQ. It's going to be a count out. So they keep the title and maybe we keep the story going. But you
Right.
have to win the title, especially the world title. You have to beat the champion. And yeah, the thing that you said about keeping you engaged, there were so many people that had the ability to do that very short term, where they'd like do a role play, and I'm like, oh my god, this is like so good and captivating. And then the next role play you read of theirs, you're just like, what happened? Where did it go? Like you've had this story and you just let it drop. What did you do? And it's not
done.
easy. So did you you helped them with this once, like you said, when they got back from summer break or for summer break? Did you do any role playing before helping them?
Well, I did. Yeah, I mean, I probably went through a ton of characters. I was an Undertaker mark, so obviously I tried an Undertaker. Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah.
I think I did Austin on a couple stints. I don't know. I probably went through the gambit of just rolling through guys to see if anything would stick. And just, it wasn't really my thing. I'll admit I could have been a C tier guy. Like, okay, if somebody really needed a match, like, fine, I'll go out here and I'll throw something together. But I ain't pulling off the time and effort to really go above and beyond to gain a title here. I mean, it would have been easy. I ran the league. I could have done what I wanted.
Don't say shit like that, because we're gonna get into that in a minute about me. Don't say that shit.
It could happen. I think that's where I eventually started getting more. In the early days, I tried it. It just didn't happen. As I transitioned more to just be running the day to day, I couldn't. Like, it just, I could have been impartial. That's not a big deal. But there's no way I could have put any effort into role playing and then turning around and writing 10 matches or trying to do anything properly.
What I'll say is, so in 2008, I believe is when it was, where at that point you had already mostly stepped away, not fully, but like Ash was running a lot of stuff. Charles was running a lot of the day-to-day stuff and results and all of that. And then he was getting burnt out. So in 2008, I had my entire life collapse with like 17 personal things that happened within the window of like 2 months. And GWF, I will say, saved me because I volunteered to do more. And that's all I did for about a year or two, was literally role play constantly, do the results, do the updates, write almost every single match on the card. And it literally took almost every hour of the day. There were so many times where people, when they were trying to get me out of the depression and funk and whatever you want to call it, would be like, hey, let's go do this. And I was like, I can't. I have to write 16 matches for this pay-per-view, or I got to write 16 matches and this role play for the pay-per-view. I have to do this. I have to do this. There was so much to do with that. But at least for me in that, like the first year or so, where it like saved me because it always gave me something to do. There was always something to do with GWF because like at you guys' peak, there was, I want to say, 152 members on the roster. And now we did allow people to have 2 or 3 characters. But even so, that was roughly like 50, at minimum, 50 individual people. And it was more than that. Because like me, I was only 1 character. But like 50 minimum people that were on there every week, role playing, trying to find feuds, going for the title, and asking questions and everything else. So it went ham for so long compared to what I thought it would. Like I thought Efeds would be a thing that I liked maybe within like 5 years would die out. And technically they're still going now. I haven't looked at any of them since GWF closed, but I have friends that are still in them, still doing it once a week or once every other week and enjoying it. But I know for at least myself, as soon as all the work started adding up, I could see why you're like, I wouldn't have time to role play because basically at certain points, you don't have time to breathe with how much work. And you were like I was in the beginning where it was, I want to get this all done. I want to make GWF look the best. How do I do that? How do I make it stand out? You had putting up videos. You had changing the layout and changing the way things look and making us stand out more. I had let me update everything the minute it is due so that it looks like we're always doing something. That was my ability. Like if results were due the next day, I had them trying to be 12 hours earlier than everybody expected them to be and to be posted. If the deadline was Saturday at 1 p.m. for the pay-per-views, the like Sunday at 12 a.m. I tried to post the pay-per-view so everybody all day Sunday could read them and like prep for the Raw was the way I tried to like make it stand out. And I know people like Ash/Charles, the way he tried was with the feuds. Like he loved trying to not only just his own characters, but giving people's advice for like what they should do to make it interesting for other readers. Because I know there was a ton of people that like only read their own matches or only read their own segments, but then there were some that literally read it all. So you have to try to make it interesting for everybody, similar to if you were going to put the product on TV. How did you find in the early going? Did you have people writing their own segments and matches, or were you guys doing that yourselves? And especially when they stepped away, were you just writing everything, or did you start making people write their own stuff?
Initially, it was me. And as you figured out, that's too much, right? So you take any card and you're like, I would get a message, hey, we want to have some kind of segment. We want this to happen. Initially, I'm like, okay, I'll think of something, right? I'll throw something together. But then you're writing that and the matches and the whole night. Like, man, that's a lot of effort to kind of throw together. And I'm working full time too, right? So let's not discount that fact. So you have certain hours a day. You're like, okay, well, I'm working between, if it was 12 and 8, I'm holding the afternoon shift or whatever. Okay, that means I'm doing stuff in the morning. Maybe I get some time at work during the evening hours if it slows down. But I'm coming home and I'm working on this card all night till probably midnight because that's what it's going to take. So what eventually happened is that's where you see a lot of the stuff, like the admin pages that became
loved the admin pages.
Those are all built on what I felt necessity, right? So first of all, the site would never have been that if I didn't get the email from WWF, right? We were getting there, but WWF made me do the name and password thing, right? That's where we had to go.
Just so everybody knows, WWF was not a fan of Efeds because we were using their characters and the likenesses. Granted, not many people were making money off it, but we were using their characters not necessarily the way they wanted them or to have the control over it. So when Efeds were a big thing for a very short period of time, they sent out cease and desist letters to a lot of prominent Efeds out there telling them you're not allowed to do this, that, or the other. And a lot of Efeds either shut down, because I know many shut down that I were in, and then you had Dennis and GWF who decided to make it username and password to get into it. You wouldn't have any access to the site without a username and password. And I don't know when you guys added it in, but you also had to get an invitation. Like, I couldn't just get in there. Like, the first time I joined you guys, it was before the cease and desist letter, and I was able to join, no problem. But then after that, I tried to get on the site and I couldn't. So I had to have, again, Mick Walsh. He's like, dude, you only get like 5 invites at the time, or 10 or something. He's like, I already sent out all of them. I'll find a friend who has one and I'll have him send you one. So that's how I got on, because of a friend had an invite, because you had set it up like that so that WWE couldn't hopefully sue you guys.
Right. Man, I wish I could think back to how long, because I'm not going to lie, that turnaround was very quick in my mind. It might have been a month, but in my mind, it felt like 2 weeks of going from what we had to basically slapping a name and password on the front of it, and then doing the invite system and the approval. Like, all the admin pages, again, were built out of necessity. Again, I didn't want to just have open registrations, because then what stops them from making an account? Just jumping right in. I'm like, okay, well, that can't happen. So that going to the name and passwords led to the admin pages of invitations and messages, and then it expanded to other things, such as submit a segment. All right, so I could go in and submit, hey, I want to do this backstage segment. Who is this involved? You would tag the other people that it was on, and everybody had to approve it. If there were 10 people on it and 9 people approve it, that segment didn't go on the card. And you
guys were so far ahead of everybody else when you started doing that shit. Like, it was ahead of some of the social stuff that was during that time too. Because I was a part of some like forums and stuff that didn't have the functionality that you guys had within GWF's own scope. And the fact that it lasted for as long as it did, we all know that coding in the world of the internet, usually stuff breaks or goes away or stops working. Like, this lasted. I know you and I have, or you mentioned in the video that you did years ago, of saying like you never would have built it this way nowadays, but it still held. Like, almost everything still worked. You only got reached out to a few times about like, hey, there's something broken here. But for the most part, that code lasted and could do so much stuff. Like, the amount of admin tools and who could have some rights or more than that right, or literally all rights to everything, was crazy. The amount of like user functionality there was. So big kudos to you, and like starting that trend for other Efeds to try to even comprehend what you guys were doing and try to mimic it a little bit.
And that was all hand rolled. I mean, I read a book. Like, I picked up a book, read a handful of things to get going, and then just figured out, like, all right, I'm gonna just try and figure out the rest. And looking back at that code, it is completely terrible. It is, knowing what I know today, right? I will say that was a springboard into what became my career, because if I didn't do any of that, I would never have had a clue where to start. But that did spring me more into the coding side of things and into a career, essentially. So that was kind of neat how that worked out. But it was necessity. None of that existed. Like, it's not like I borrowed that from it. There was a few times we did borrow a guest book. Like, that was the role play board, was the guest book. And I do remember that either the guest book changed or it wasn't free anymore or whatever the situation was. But people always wanted a different layout. Like, we had the classic GWF layout, which is just a page after page of posts. But then people liked the some kind of board host, or some kind of look where it was paging and you could search and you could do. So I wrote a front end like to make it look like that. I'm like, well, we have the data. I'll let you choose the layout, classic or new, whatever you want. But that was time too, right? So of all the times of reading role plays and then writing matches and writing the cards, what other time did I have to innovate the site to add these features. That was my, oh, what is it? Wednesday, nothing's going on. Guess I'm doing some stuff. Saturday morning when I'm just waking up doing nothing, guess I'll make some flash videos. Um, I had to have so much of like the flash stuff whenever I got an idea. I could be sitting there watching Raw. And I'm like, oh, I caught a glimpse of their Titantron. Oh, I could kind of whip something up quick to give me just a quick idea and then come back to it later. I had so many in the works that I like started and had like 3 or 4 frames of video. Nothing even flushed out. But I had to keep them going because I knew everybody expected once a month that we'd have 6 or 8 new Titantron based entrance videos. And I was like, oh man, how am I gonna keep up with this? I'm just
People look
eventually
forward
just
to
run
that.
out of ideas.
Yeah.
And everybody wanted to borrow them. Everybody wanted a version of their own with their logo in it. And I was like, oh man. And then that led to you know what? I'm gonna make a downloads page.
I remember the downloads page.
I'm gonna put up the old downloads that I have. Like after 6 months, I'll put them in the downloads page and you can download them and do whatever you want to them. I don't care. And there were people who were members of the site that did no role playing. They just went to the downloads page, got what they wanted, and left.
Not only the videos too, you also had the PSDs of the wrestlers that you couldn't find on some of the sites because I guess you found them or you cut them yourself, and like there were some that nobody else had.
I would either buy, if an event came, you could get the program, and that had some cool ones in it. You could on eBay, you could always find the 8x10s. Every time they released a new batch, you can get the 8x10s. I actually made really good friends with a guy who basically, whenever he got a new batch 8x10s, he would just mail them to me and send me a bill. I'm like, great. I never had to think about it. He just sent them to me. Or I would just look around. Like, man, I really don't have a good picture of Chris Candido. Like, I have the same one that every site uses, and it's terrible quality. Where am I going to find a picture of Chris Candido? I found a signed 8x10 on eBay, bought it for a few bucks, scanned it in, tried to Photoshop out the signature, and hey, cool, I have a better quality Chris Candido photo who was our world champion and, one of our, at the time, better role players consistently. So,
oh, yeah, he had every title.
Yeah.
Yeah, he ended up having every title. I remember that.
Yeah. And that was another thing too. Like that stems back. The PSDs. That was why I was so hard to stay with real wrestlers, was just because I could get media for them for the most part. But as you mentioned before, somebody would choose a random character, Pogo the Clown, out of whatever wrestling federation on the West Coast. I don't know. I'm like, who? What? And I'd have to Google and Yahoo or whatever the heck was around at the time. And like, is this guy real? I'm like, yeah. And there's like 2 pictures of him ever. Names that I know. Like I remember the Messiah. He was did stuff with did the Juggalo wrestling thing for a little while. He did another couple extreme leagues. I remember looking this guy up and like there was 2. I think I found like 2 pictures that were even worth, like I could use as a profile picture. And I was like, man, I hope these are good enough because this is all I could find on this guy. It was, the age of the internet was still, blossoming.
Well, I was going to bring that up because Google wasn't a thing in the early goings of GWF. Google didn't start until like 2000 and something.
It sounds about right. I do remember using Yahoo and stuff a lot, so that could have been a thing. Google Images would have been a godsend at that time. I'll tell you that much.
Right? Yeah. I think about like if you were to like start everything over, how much easier some of this stuff would be. Because as you said, you picked up a book to help you learn some of this coding stuff, where now you could go on Google and either watch tutorial videos of what to do, or get ideas from other people, or even the code, or go on someplace like Fiverr or something like that and make somebody build it for you. There's so many tools nowadays compared to what there was. So when I remember the functionality of the site, thinking back to that, I was always impressed by how much stuff we could do, especially anytime I moseyed out to other Efeds that weren't GWF, and you saw them trying, but being nowhere in the same realm as what functionality that GWF had with your own individual account, your own private message system, your own way to submit segments, your own way to you could update your own profile and information. You had also, anytime that you had your whatever wrestler you were, you could update some of their information too on the roster page. Like, you had so much control based on the access that the system gave them. And for the EFED, I also remember, what was that? It was another Flash video that you did, which was a pain in the ass to update, by the way, because I didn't know Flash like you knew Flash. But for the champions page, where you hover over the title and it shows the picture of the person. Oh God, that was such a pain in the ass. Trying to learn that Flash from your template that you had and try to get it to work. That took me hours to get it. Once I got it once, I think I was good, but it took hours. So I couldn't imagine you creating that, or maybe it was better to create it because you kind of knew what you were doing at the time. But it looked cool. Like, for the layman that didn't have to do anything with it, it looked cool.
And I think that was stolen from a WWF idea. I think they had a website at the time of their current champions. Let's face it, 90% of my ideas came from something I saw on WWF.com. And I think they had some kind of rollover, probably in JavaScript or something of the like. And I think it was far more expansive, but I'm like, you know what? I think we could do something with it. Like, I can mimic this in Flash and then do something. That was always my thing. Like, what's the next idea? Like, it's cool when I put out the current champions Flash, but then it gets old. 3 months, nobody's even looking at the current champions Flash because it's been like the new people coming in. Oh, that's cool. But the old people, we've had that forever. What's next? What else are we gonna get? Like, you had to try to keep ahead of it.
So for anybody listening to, this is the first actual conversation Dennis and I have had, besides for email trails, private messages, when he catfished me pretending to be Kevin McDermott. When all that stuff happened, it was just very funny to hear in the video that you did, that you were basically acting like him, so that it gave you a chance to role play, but not role play, but you could put all the blame on Kevin. That was so interesting to hear, because I was like, damn it, why didn't I do that when I took over? I could have created this separate alter ego as somebody. I could have named it as one of like my friends and been like, that guy named Matt, he's such a dick. I don't know. He just picked that other guy as the winner. That's what I should have done. But hearing all this stuff that you had done and being like, when would I have time to do all this stuff? God, I wish that there was a chance back in the day where both of us could have connected at the same time with a level of like effort. Because, like I said, scripting wise is all you. Flash wise was all you. The getting everything updated and make sure, that was my thing that I thrived on. Like, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to make it look like everything was up to date and everything's good, but I couldn't change anything. Like, I remember having to come to you we wanted to change the color from like blue to red or red to blue just so something changed. And me being like, how do I do that, Dennis? And you were like, well, you just changed this one little line in the code. And I was like, okay.
That was the hardest part. I mean, my passion was always the computer side, and it still is. And even watching wrestling, I remember, even when I just kind of like started like not paying as much attention, I was always still interested in the media. Like, oh, somebody's got a new Titantron, somebody's got a new theme. There's a cool new promo video for the pay-per-view that's coming up. Like, I was always drawn to the visual media of it all. Like, what grasps a person's attention? And like, that's kind of cool. Look at, I loved the Armageddon, intros and the promos and the everything they put around, like the iconography of the symbols and kind of a wheel. Like, oh, it's kind of cool and cryptic, but it feels neat. And I think I ended up stealing some of that for some of our, like, I just blatantly stole the idea. Like, oh, theirs looks cooler, but I can do something that's mine.
Yep.
just give it a little spin. And so that's where all the flash in the video. That's why the Raw page had a video intro. That's why the Thunder page had a video intro, and the pay-per-views always had some kind of. To the most part, if we knew the main event early enough, I would try to get some kind of promo video. If I had, or if an idea struck me, like, man, I really want to use some kind of like thunder and lightning and rain motif, I'm just gonna put together a generic Stormfront promo with no wrestlers or no nothing in it, just some text in graphics.
I remember a couple of those.
And that's what always drew me in. I'm like, I could every once in a while we'd have a pay per view, and I just like, man, I just don't got it today. Like it's just I got nothing. Uncensored. I don't know what uncensored again. I'm out of ideas, man. But we'd come up with some new thing. Like I do remember WrestleManias were always kind of fun because you'd always put a different spin on it. Like WrestleMania 6 was I'm going evil. 666. I could do something cool with this kind of look, and then we did one and it kind of copied the Hollywood motifs that they were doing for I think 25 or somewhere around there. This one ends up it's in Buffalo, so cool. We're gonna do like a homecoming one, but I'm gonna borrow some of these ideas and just trying to keep that going. That was the other half of my time. The other 50% that I wasn't working on results and things of that nature was going into the media aspect to make it. And because it felt like, one, that's what I like to do. But two, I think that's what drew people to the site and made it maybe it was a younger audience, maybe the older audience didn't care. But it seemed like the younger audience was like, oh, that's cool, or how did you get that theme, or where did that come from? Like, I'm bored looking for stuff, whatever idea strikes, that's what I'm gonna do.
So I'll say for the people that were in GWF at least like a year or so, that stuff was all cool and could be there or not there, I felt like. But to get new members, absolutely. Like that was a big draw because look at all this stuff GWF has that nobody else has. And look, they just keep doing stuff. Once you're there, it wasn't so much, at least from my perspective and the couple of people that I've chatted with over the years, wasn't so much like, it was always cool to see new Titantrons or Globaltrons on like the front page, but the pay-per-view ones, because obviously you look forward to those once a month and it's usually like some big payoffs. And when you got that like intro video or whatever it ended up being, was always something exciting because it always was leading up to something. So there was always like the anticipation of, okay, what are Kevin, who basically did nothing from what I'm hearing towards the end of it, and what is Kevin and Dennis gonna do? Like, I'm surprised you had any time to do half the stuff you did, because I always coming into this was like, okay, well, it's two people. And so at least they have somebody, because I think Kevin was called like the president who did the day-to-day stuff, and you were like the webmaster who would do the digital stuff and the coding and all that. So it's like, okay, they both have their pieces. So hearing that you did it all was always like, to me, like, damn, dude, like, I'm good and I spend a lot of time doing this shit to get it done, and I don't understand this other part. I don't know how you managed for as long as you did without either one going gray like I am, or two killing yourself, because Jesus, there were some days where I was like, fuck this Fed, fuck everybody. I don't care about your damn role play. I don't care about the results. I don't care about nothing. Just leave me alone. I need to sleep.
There were days. I'm not gonna lie. There were days, and I don't remember how often I did it. But I would post like a message saying, "Hey guys, stuff's not gonna be up tonight. It's gonna be a day late. Something came up. Nothing came up. I came up. I'm like, I need a break. Stop. I can't do it. And maybe I went to the bar and we're going out like, oh, okay, I won't do Thunder until Saturday. You remember putting the calendar together. The calendar I was like, okay, where's WWF going? Look for their live events calendar. Copy, replace some text, and here we go. We're good to go. So at least it had some kind of continuity between. It looks like we were actually traveling around the country, but then having to work in breaks, like especially like, okay, we're gonna do six Thunders, six Raws and Thunders pay per view, and like I'm gonna get a week break. Like that became more and more of a thing because it had to be. Otherwise, yes, I would not have gone as long as it did.
Did you end up getting, like, I don't know exactly when Ash started helping out. Was he like the next one after you, or were there other people in like the intern that were kind of like helping out? Because I think Sam at one point was helping out, Sam Hamblin, or I just trying to remember everybody's name. It's been years.
That's a name.
That,
That is a name. I do remember a lot of people wanting to help. It was always like, oh man, it'd be great if I could do something. Problem is a lot of people just weren't trustworthy. Like, great, you offered to help. I asked you to do X. The day came and went, and I don't have X. So now I need to figure out how to write these 10 matches or put together this segment or whatever the heck it may be. I do remember Ash early on. That's where the writing committee came about.
yep.
I thought it would be a neat idea to say, hey, listen, the worst part of this is writing matches. And you know what? If you can't, if you could just write the match, I can take care of the rest. I will either change the ending if I feel like you chose the wrong one, or you can write two endings, and I'll choose the one I believe is correct. Or if it's very obvious, just write one and I'll deal with it. Like that, like okay, I think some of the people you could just, yep, you knew the winner of this one.
Well, we also had people
That's
that
fine.
no-showed, and for anybody wondering, a no-show is when someone doesn't post a role play. So the me versus Dennis. Dennis role plays. I don't role play. Obviously, Dennis wins.
Those were pretty straightforward. So that was low hanging fruit for a lot of people. And there were so many people that offered, especially early on, to be part of the writing committee. And I wrote the admin page to say, okay, I'm going to post this. It's going to send out an email to everybody. They can go in and claim matches. Like, okay, I'm going to write this one. I'm going to write this one. But there were so many times that people would claim a match. The day would come and go, and it's like 11 o'clock on Tuesday night, and I don't have this match, so I got to figure out something.
Yeah.
I think a couple times I got really annoyed, and I just put, this match wasn't posted by the writing committee member. Here's the ending. Sorry. I think that happened a couple times. I was just so angry. And so then I had to prune the writing. All these people are on the writing committee. Like two people ever did anything, and then I had to prune people back, and then you didn't get a response. So it was a neat idea. And if people would have, granted, if we had 10 matches and 15 writers, we could have easily knocked that out in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
But it never was the case. It just never happened. It was a great idea in theory, but in practice, it just didn't work.
So there were certain people, at least during my tenure, that I could always rely on. Like Ash was going to write his matches, but Ash was a bit of a perfectionist, so it was going to take a while. Dave, who was Paul Burchill, would write his matches, but usually not until like the day of the event. Not very often was it ahead of time. You mentioned about people not being trustworthy, and I remember in late 2007, early 2008, where I know that Ash was like getting burnt out and asking people for more help. And I remember offering to help and offering to do more stuff. And he's like, well, I'll talk to Dennis. And I remember him being like, well, Dennis doesn't really want anybody else to have access to the site. I spent the next, I think, 2 months writing almost every single match on the cards. And then when that happened, I remembered it was either Ash or me sending you a message or you sending me a message going, all right, we're going to give you some more stuff. And let's see how you do with this more stuff. And then as soon as I got that more stuff, I then got access to all the stuff in FTP and having access to all the pages and being able to update everything. But yeah, you have to kind of prove yourself. There's a lot of stuff that I didn't even realize on the back end of it that go into the site. There's so many pages and PHP script and everything else that even if you wanted to help, unless you're willing to learn this stuff and learn, that you have to go edit the, I'm blanking on it. Is it CCS? Is that what the page was?
CSS, yep.
CSS, yeah. You have to go edit that, which will edit like all the text in every single every single page, because we had it set for one font, but we want it set for another. We had a bunch of those that you did, and people really wouldn't understand that. They'd be like, well, why can't we just go change this one thing here? So unless you were willing to put in the work, I could understand being like very trepidatious about allowing anybody to touch it, especially because I got very territorial over it during my tenure of like running things. I couldn't imagine you guys starting it off and then running it for 5, 10, whatever, how many years it was before you slowly started backing away, and like being willing to back away when it's kind of like your baby. And even though it stresses you out, you're like, fuck this thing, I don't want to do it anymore, please let somebody else do it. It's still something that's kind of like your baby. So I know when we officially closed it, a lot of people asked about bringing it back, and I was always very adamant no. But then I know eventually, I think it was Vinny that eventually got the site or access or paid for the site, paid for whatever to have it like under him, and then it went nowhere. It did nothing. It was awful. But it was always one of those things where I was just like, I kept telling everybody no, like, just let it be dead, let it die. No one's going to have the passion that Dennis and Kevin had, which granted, again, didn't know that Kevin stepped away sooner than I thought. No one's going to have the passion that Ash had, and Ash doesn't want to run it again. No one has the passion I had. Like, just let it go. Go open your own. You don't need to like mess with this, what I consider like our legacy of e-fedding. Like, just let it die, let it be. We had a great run. 97 till when did we close it? 2015, 16?
Yeah, I mean, it ran for a while after I walked away, so.
Yeah, it was, oh God, I can't even remember the year now. But yeah, it was a very long time. It was, I think we got to a WrestleMania, and I think that was our last event, because that was our plan. Or no, we wanted to get to the following WrestleMania and didn't. We ended on a SummerSlam. That's what it was. What, 2013? 2013, 2014 is what I'm guessing. So I think I've been out of the EFED world for almost a decade now, which is really weird to say because I was in that thing for so long. I want to say I started around like 10 years old. So we're talking about like 1998.
And that was hard. I mean, that point right there is hard for me to judge because we came into it, we were college kids, right? So we're, 18, 19, 21, 22, 23, however the heck long it lasted. 97, I was, 17, 18, somewhere in that range. So do the math over the next decade plus, right? I never knew who I was talking to, right? I knew, okay, here's a kid role playing. I didn't know if they were 8. I didn't know if they were 35, right? So again, that goes back to the, okay, you want to do stuff for the site, that's great, but who am I talking to?
Right, yeah.
The one thing if you're, 12 and you want to help with the site, like there were some writers, like part of the writers committee, that I was like, wow, that's awful. Like that is not a match. Like can't do it. Sorry, I'm gonna have to rewrite this whole thing. Like I would try and take their concept of a match and expand on it. I'm like, no, this is terrible. Like, oh man. So that was a tough thing. I mean, it's still a tough thing on the internet, especially today. But even then, couldn't just go trusting some random person at the end. It was like at least I knew when I kind of handed it off. I knew Ash was he was at least around forever. So I'm like, fine, good luck. Let me know if you need help. But at least I knew that he understood the assignment.
Yep. Yeah, and I think that was his part with me too, is because at the time that I started asking, I had been around forever. I had been. It's so funny to become Canyon too, just because he ended up. The only reason I joined as Canyon is because when I first joined, you guys had like 123 people on the roster. And I was like, who the fuck is left? Like, who am I supposed to be? There's nobody else. Like, what am I supposed to do here? And then so I randomly was just like, okay, Chris Canyon, sure, I can be him. Let's see how it works. And then that became my character forever. But with putting in the years of role playing and creating feuds and everything, and then making the connections, because that's part of it too, is talking to these people, because AOL used to be a big thing back in the day, and everybody had AOL Messenger, so everybody was talking. Your private message system definitely helped for anybody who didn't have their AIM name. You could send them a message and try to talk to them there, or get their information and then have that conversation. But if you don't make those connections, I don't know if I really want to trust you with helping X, Y, or Z. Because I know a few people came to me too, some that I knew that weren't trustworthy to begin with, and I was just like, no. And then other ones were like, okay, we've been talking for like a year now because of this. You kind of have never let me down for either helping with a match or helping with this. Okay, let's see how you do with this part of it. But yeah, I was very gun shy to give anybody, and again, wasn't my baby, felt like my baby, but I didn't create it. Very gun shy to give anybody even more access, because I was just like, you're gonna fuck it up, you're gonna screw something up, and I'm not gonna know how to fix it, and then I'm gonna have to go to you and be like, hey, can you fix this? Somebody fucked it up, and I shouldn't have trusted them. My bad. So I felt like there was that extra responsibility on me too to not fuck it up for you.
And I remember having backups of every, like I would log in every once in a while, just download everything, just because, like, just to have a backup, just in case.
Yeah, I did that a couple times just because it was funny, because I did it once, and like 4 months later we had a problem, and then I re-uploaded everything from 4 months before, and I still had all the graphics, all the results from that 4 month period. So I was able to re-upload everything, because I had so much storage space for GWF stuff that was not what I ever expected when I first joined an EFED. And as I was putting everything together, I was just like, okay, if the site ever goes down, I might be able to recreate this thing, just because I have literally everything here. So yeah,
I think I still have everything. I have Photoshop files and Flash files. I mean, not that any of it's any good anymore, but I think I still have most of that stuff.
Oh, that's great. There's some stuff like this EFED in general, like generation that grew up. I feel like we all have like a special place in our heart, not only for wrestling, but some of these characters that we were for many years, or certain federations that we were a part of. Like WDW that Mick ran, is always going to hold a place in my heart, because it's the first time I felt like I knew what I was doing role playing. But then my tenure in GWF was everything, and then obviously the admin stuff afterwards. But I feel like, so I understand the whole keeping all those files. Just, even though I doubt you'll ever necessarily use them again unless we do more podcasts where I grab you and you throw up random graphics in the back. It's not like you'll ever need them, but they're just something to hold on to
Right.
have. So I get that part of it.
It was such a big part of my life too. That was a decade of hard work. Like, I can't delete it. Like, I don't need it, but I can't delete it.
Yeah. Well, it's not only just a decade of work that, like, you could think of that like a job, but I think at least I did, and it sounds like you did, because you were doing more than I was, because you were doing the graphic stuff too. It was more than a full-time job, even though you're working a full-time job, because at certain points within GWF, I was in middle school, high school, and then college/working. I had that whole tenure with my experience with GWF. But you're also, when you're working, you're putting in 40 hours at work, and then you're going home, and then you're putting in more than usually 40 hours. Because on some of the weekends, like 8 a.m. till 8 p.m., if not longer, I'm just on the computer typing up stuff, doing coding, trying to make sure everything is all set. So it became like more than a job. It was a passion, even though they got frustrating, that didn't pay off in the sense financially. Sometimes it paid off for, like, you could see your effort was appreciated, or there were times where we posted results and I was so happy with like the showing of the role plays and the people that did the matches along with the matches that I wrote, where as soon as I would post it, I'd be like, oh, this is a good time. Sure, tomorrow is another event and I'm gonna regret it, but this was pretty good. Those are few and far between.
Yeah, I mean, I just remember waking up pay-per-view mornings, like Sunday morning, and be like, well, I better start writing some matches because I feel like eating dinner tonight. So I'm gonna need to start now.
Oh God, it's good to know that it wasn't just me feeling this pain. We felt it at different times, but oh God, it was the same way, man. Just looking at all the stuff, because especially when you had the people that put in the work to create their feuds, to come to these matches, and you kind of want to, and they role play for them, and you're like, you want to put out good work for them so that they can have something to feel good about whether they win or lose. It should still be a good match, because I'm a big proponent of, in wrestling and in Efeds, you can lose a match and still come out stronger for it. It just depends on how the match goes, and it depends on how well they role played. So you're trying to live up to what they did and have this big payoff. Otherwise, there's no reason for them to come back either. So you're trying to have a return customer. But yeah, you start like 7, 8 a.m. Be like, okay, this is what I'm doing today. This is all I'm doing today. Everybody can just leave me alone. I'm gonna sit here and write these matches and try to weave in the story that they've told while writing this match, which gets old pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's and then you got to remember you're trying to weave in their things too, and you're writing, and you can picture it in your head, but that might not be what they're picturing, because we're writing a story without pictures. We're writing a novel.
Yep.
But we're also not professionals. And I remember more than one instance, countless that I could just think of, where I got angry messages after I posted results. And I'm like, why are you angry? I thought that came out good. Because they saw it in a completely different way. And I'm like, that's not what I meant it to look like. Let me try and explain it
the way you saw it go.
Let me try and re-explain it. And
yeah,
I'm like, oh, I see what you thought now, but I didn't see it while I was writing. So it becomes a thing. Cause now, yes, you put all this effort into it. You want your repeat business, but at the same time, you're like, oh, I just feel like I let somebody down. Like, oh crap, what just happened?
Yeah, I remember writing a specific one for my own character, and I literally had my guy get his ass kicked from the start of the match to the end of the match with almost no offense. And the other guy, I won based on the results committee, and I just had him roll him up like a schoolboy and hold the tights to win because I was a heel at that point, and I got angry messages over that. Not that I won, but how that guy, that doesn't make any sense. He literally kicked your ass from the entire time. How would you win like that? It was like, well, I was trying to make your guy look extremely strong, my guy look extremely weak, and pull the heel maneuver at the end, but he just couldn't understand why, like, this character is going to get his ass kicked the entire time and then lose at the end. And it was trying to, like, I saw it one way in my head, being like, well, you're going to look really strong here, and you're just screwed by the heel. And you see it as your guy looking weak because he got pinned at the end, even though this other guy took tons of punishment. And it is literally all about perspective of how you're reading it and how you're engaged. And we don't have editors when we're writing these things. It's just us really that's doing it. We wouldn't have time for editors if we tried. But it is basically just off of my viewpoint, or when you're writing your viewpoint, and you're just hoping it comes off the right way.
Right. And yeah, who's going to check? I could barely get people to help me write matches, much less have somebody, hey, can you check what I wrote to make sure it makes sense to you? Yeah,
yeah.
Cards would have never gotten out. You would have had a role play 2 weeks in advance.
Yeah,
it's not gonna work.
No, somebody could role play.
Unless it get. I mean, I
go ahead.
I do remember having like pie in the sky ideas at one point. Oh, what if we had a team? What if we made T-shirts? What if we did this? All the stupid ideas that run through your head, right? But none of that. I mean, just getting people together, like we talked about before, it just wasn't there, and that might have been an audience problem. Maybe the audience trended younger, so you're dealing with a different level of people, which is That's how it is. No knock against that. But you also couldn't find like another 20 something to help you go through it, much less multiple 20 somethings to help you go through the logistics of it, right? Like that's there. You could have found 4 jobs for people, right? Like, okay, one to do webmaster, one to do oversight of the whole thing, couple to run results, and a couple to make sure people are ranked appropriately. I don't know. You could have divvied up any number of jobs that would have taken half a week to do.
Yeah, so I know when we were doing it, we tried to give, even though everybody had the access, we were like, okay, Sam's going to do the rankings. This person's going to do the roster win-loss draw record. This person's going to do it. It didn't happen. And if it did, it was like a one-off and somebody else didn't do it. And then eventually you just kind of take control yourself. Because it was very hard to find the dedicated people every week that would do it without blinking. Like that you kind of have to live and breathe it, which isn't healthy. Like for anybody listening, it wasn't healthy for probably me or Dennis. But it's something that we both love to do. It is unfortunate that it was different eras, so to speak, because I think both of us could have benefited from the other one's ability to either take over a little bit or just take half the workload rather than just being like, no, just throw it on the back. I got this. We'll just keep pushing forward until I die.
Yeah, I mean that would have been. I think that's what we were trying to like. I mean, let's face it. That's what the league started as. Kevin running with Bill helping and me doing the website. That was the team, right? And then life happens. Life gets in the way. So the same way it happened to our friend group running the site, it would have happened to most people. And it's not like you had people applying daily to that they wanted to dedicate time to this. It's not a job. There's no money. In fact, it costs me money. I think I'm still paying for the domain name today because
Are
I'm
you?
not losing that. Yeah.
I
I'm
thought
not
he.
giving that name up. Come on.
I thought Vinny gave that. I thought Vinny bought that or all that stuff.
Nobody bought anything from me. I own everything still.
Oh, you own everything. Okay, all right, good to know. So this is
So
what
when I
we're.
want to put out the retro T-shirts, then I'm good to go.
Oh, okay. I figured this was our place to announce that we're coming back. Is that what we're doing?
Oh, sure. Yeah, great. Who's running it? Not it.
I think we both put in our decades. I think we're good.
Yeah.
I
If you find I think the audience would be a little tough. That's it'd be tough to cut in right now. I don't know if there's a market for it.
If it was, it'd be all the people that had already done it. Like if you could get those people all back, and then maybe you draw in new ones. But yeah, it's a completely different world now with what we have access to, where everything is such. I need gratification right now, and role playing wasn't that. Role playing was painstaking to come up with and be creative with what you could say and do, and trying to be so poignant in what you said, but without going off on these either random tangents or trying to find ways to captivate your reader so they'll want to keep reading, and then trying to put that down on in a role play against an opponent who then is also talking about you. It's if you're not creative or you don't want to put the time into that, there's nothing like it in today's world that I feel like, because everything is like a TikTok thing where you're scrolling and it's 10 seconds here, 5 seconds there. Like role plays, some of the ones that I'm the most proud of took me so fucking long to write. There's two that I remember, but one of them was I remember messaging Dave, who again, that's Paul Burchill in the EFED world, where I said, if I don't win this match, I think I've set this role play up for my character to die in the ring. And it's one of those where it just keeps having flashbacks, but you see my character is just beat up because he's been through it over the years and everything. And if I don't win, and it was a Money in the Bank ladder match, so if I don't win, I think he should take a bad fall and he should die. And it's just one of those that I was proud of because of how much time I put into it. And then I remember Dave laughing at me, and then he read my role play and then got back to me. He was like, holy shit, I think your character is going to die. And I was like, yeah, that's what I was going for. But there are moments like that if you don't have that attention span to put in that level of effort into something, to kind of like, again, write a novel. Like if you put all the role plays everybody did or all the matches you and I wrote together, there are thousands upon thousands of words and pages, and I don't know how many books it would create just by the amount of words that are in it. There's nothing like that nowadays. If anything, we should just use Chat GPT. Hey, write us a 20-minute match with Chris Jericho and The Rock. Done.
You cannot give a person a wall of text today. But I'm going to be honest. Even I have trouble sitting through an entire article of whatever I'm reading, like in one sitting. Like, oh, something. Oh, the kid's running around over here, right? Oh, put this down. Okay, where did I leave off? It could take me a full day to read what should be a 15-minute news article. It happens.
Yeah.
And I mean, I wasn't far behind your Chat GPT idea. I mean, I had bank. I mean, I think I said it in the video. I saved all those matches that were written, and I would put at the top, person versus person, in the stipulation, and then I would write the match, and they were all in just notepad files. And when I had to write a match and I didn't feel like writing it, I would search for a steel cage match, and it would search that folder. I'd find two guys that were pretty similar to the guys that were fighting this time. Change some words around, maybe write a couple extra sentences, walk away.
It's funny you say that, because on our last event of the year, or last event of GWF, we had 16 or 17 matches on the card, because I was trying to get all the old vets to come back for one more show and do everything. And every match, I want to say out of those 16, I wrote 10 of them. And we even had matches that people no-showed for, both sides, and I still wrote matches because I wanted the last show to mean something. And I remember one of the matches, and somebody was supposed to write it, and they didn't, and I'd already written 10, and it was a rematch from the match that they had like 3 years prior. I went and found that match. I went and copied and pasted it. I edited out a few things. So, because I think one of them had a manager at the time, but doesn't now. And I just edited those out, and I just changed the ending and went, done. Because I was so done. I'd already written 10 matches. It was the last event of GWF ever. It was still a decent match, but it was shot for shot what happened 3 years before, just with a different ending. So you saying that's hilarious, because I did that because I just didn't want to do anymore. There's a level of it where you're just like, oh, I just need to tap out. Let this be done.
I just need it to be over. I need to go out and see my friends, or I need to go do something else, or I need to just go and lie in bed for 25 hours because I'm toast. Either way, pick your poison.
Yeah. It's funny, too, because at least in the height of it, because I was enjoying at least the beginning parts of it before I started getting burnt out, where I didn't realize how much time I was putting into it. Like, obviously, I was putting a ton of time into it, but until I stopped doing it and then started doing other things with that time, I was just like, oh my God, there's so much more time that I have to go do this or go do that. Or when I got to be home from going out with friends, to like the bar or to bowling or a movie or something, I could just go home and relax or go to sleep without being like, all right, I got to log on and see what's going on. I got to see what I can update. I got to see what I can write. I got to see something so that I can make sure everything's all set, so shit hasn't hit the fan or something. Now, when those times where I get to go out, there's no pressure of going out. Like, maybe I should be on my computer. Maybe I should be checking this. So it was just funny for me to see how much actual time I had spent on it, because when you're in the heart of it, like, I didn't know. Like, obviously I knew it was unhealthy. Obviously I knew I got burnt out, but I didn't realize how many hours got sunk in.
Yeah, I mean, I remember sitting there. I would sit at my computer with my headphones on, and I was doing any number of things. Could be writing matches, could be making flash animations, could be cutting out PSDs, with the paintbrush in Photoshop. zoom all the way. Wait, I gotta get really close. Hang on. I want to zoom in so I can make sure the edge looks really good. Like this can't be that bad. And just countless, countless hours. It's like, oh, it's 2 a.m. Should probably go to bed. I gotta work tomorrow. You know.
Oh, I so many times ended up doing I'm going to bed at 4 a.m. and I need to be up 6 a.m. so I can drive to school. I remember some of those nights and like getting to school, and it's a very like e-fetting. It's nerdy to talk about, and in the height of WWE or F at the time, like what was it, 97 to around like 2000 or so, where it was just in pop culture everywhere. It still kind of is, but not to this level where they were pulling crazy ratings. Like everybody was watching wrestling. Once you got past that point, when you said e-feds, nobody had an idea what you were talking about. If you said wrestling, people were just like, it's wrestling. So trying to explain to somebody why you're so tired and why you've put so much time and energy into this was not an easy conversation to have. And most of the time you're just like, I didn't sleep well. Don't worry about it. Hopefully I'll be better tomorrow, but most likely not, because I got to go home in like a few hours and write more results. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah, we really hit the. I mean, my tenure of the it was like it was 97. I probably was later 97, maybe 98, where I really got fully involved. But I was probably in there till 2007 full time, maybe longer. Maybe it was 2008. I can't remember the actual time. It's been lost to my memory. That's it. By the end, I was like, I'm only doing this to do the web stuff. Like that was the only thing keeping me going was, all right, I can learn some new PHP things that I might use later. I'm doing some Flash and I kind of like doing that, or some Photoshop stuff. Like I think this could be something for career wise. It was I was doing one career, and then in 2004 I actually started doing more programming. Like that was my career, and it's like, oh well, I'm trying stuff out over here, and then I'm kind of taking stuff to work to say, oh yeah, here's ideas that using GWF as a sounding board to see if it works on the web, and then taking it to work and like, hey, I got an idea for the website. Like, what do you think about this? So that was the only thing keeping me going for a long time. Like I had checked out of the business of writing results and honestly caring who won and trying to nitpick every detail in somebody's role play. It's like, I've been doing this for too long. Like I can't.
We got a lethal weapon this thing. We're too old for this shit.
That's exactly the quote. That is 100% true.
Yeah.
And I think that's the point. Like we were talking, like, the age bracket, like, man, okay, let's say 2000s, the age bracket of wrestling was your 12 to 16-year-old male was your demographic, right?
Yep.
Yeah. You age out of that. Like, okay, 2007 now, like, either we're bringing in more kids, which just this sounds awfully creepy at this point, but either you're bringing in new kids that want to be part of this, or you're just all old and you're like, I just don't have the energy anymore.
Yeah, it's definitely because I remember, so in 2006 is when I graduated high school, and I remember like there weren't too many more, and I'm sure there were, but not that I like that actually like stuck around for a long time, of like kids that were coming up that were in the 9, 10, 11 range. There was mostly, it seemed to be like other e-feds were like closing or didn't have longevity, so people were like slowly finding their way back to GWF. It was very hard to try to like at least from like 2008, 2009, 2010 to like try to entice like a new person that maybe is 10, 11, 12. Again, it does sound bad when you say it like this, to come into my van and enjoy themselves with some candy. But no, to like join our private website, look at our videos. But no, there's to try to get people to like understand what role playing is and GWF, at least for me, it wasn't the place that you should go if you've never role played before. GWF for me was the place that if you had already got experience, this is a place that you come to hone your skills or to prove that you're one of the best. And that's very hard when you're trying to bring in like a new crop of people, because you do have the front website that says, invite only, enter a username and password. So for like a new person, that's a little intimidating, but maybe also a little bit like, hey, what is this all about? But to then get them in and see the level of some of the talent that we had in there, that to me, just personally, when I first did it, was intoxicating. Like I was like, great, this is going to make me better. But other people that I know have left GWF and said so. They're like, I'm never going to do what they do. So what was even the point of trying? Which isn't a great mindset to have. But when you have that level of people, like there were some role plays that like Ash did that were phenomenal. Some of his storytelling was great. Same with Dave was great at some of his storytelling. I remember reading some of, I don't remember his name, Devin Bacon or something. Was that Candido?
Yeah, it was Chris Candido.
Yep. Yeah. So I remember him reading some of his. Some of his were top-notch stuff too. It's one of the reasons why he ended up holding most of the belts, is because he just had a way that he could write this character and put you like you were either standing right next to him or like you were sitting on your couch watching a TV. And so for someone that's just starting out and they're just writing these role plays that are not that interesting, like I'd be very intimidated by like, okay, maybe I don't want to be here. So when you're trying to get in that new crop, I always felt like GWF was the Goliath, so to speak, that wasn't really going to get them in the door, which is not easy when you're trying to make new characters or make new what do I want to say? I don't even want to say feuds, because people could obviously drop and pick up other characters, but you need fresh blood, new blood to like keep everything going. You don't want to just keep having the same matches with Ash, the same matches with Dave, the same matches with Aaron, the same matches with Tom, the same matches with Bear, so on and so forth. Like you gotta have the new. And I feel like that was one of the things, like as wrestling slowly died off, Efedding had like a cliff that it fell off and then slowly started to fall off even more.
Yeah, I felt it. I'm not gonna, I was in it, right? Like this was, I put a lot of my life into that, as you, and you could, like, okay, yeah, I wasn't done watching wrestling, but I wasn't watching like I was, right?
Right.
You definitely had the the ending of the Monday Night Wars was one thing, but even through the early 2000s, there was really good stuff going on, and then it just kind of hit that mid 2000s lull, and you're just kind of like, it's not bad. I'm just not into it like I once was anymore. I just have other things going on. If it's on, I'll watch it, but I'd also like to watch the hockey game, so maybe I'll watch the hockey game instead. Then I'll just watch some Raw recap or something that I can pick up most of what's going on and still be good.
It's funny that you mentioned hockey, because I remember that you were big into it, and I remember some of the arenas that you picked besides for when you weren't just copying WWE's lineup so it looks like you're traveling. I remember some of the arenas that were originally picked, because when I started changing the calendar, I was going like backwards in time to kind of see where you guys used to go. And I remember seeing like 5 or 6 hockey arenas, and I went, pretty sure those are only hockey arenas and they don't do anything else there besides hockey. I felt that like that was like I don't know if you did it on purpose, but there was like a little homage to you, because you're like, I like hockey, and damn it, we're doing an event here.
It's probably what I was looking at, as like I was probably playing NHL whatever at the time, like, oh, here's a name right down, or I'm watching the game, there's where they are, let's write that down. I just taking notes wherever I could, like, okay, it doesn't matter where we were going, like, hey, we're in Nashville one night and we're in San Jose the next night. Yeah, that doesn't work. But that didn't matter. That was semantics. It didn't matter.
In the fake world, it doesn't really matter. There was no real traveling. So let's close up shop for the EFED talk before we start talking about Mania. For me, there's no chance of getting back into EFEDs. Like that chapter of my life has been written. I literally wrote a book that I doubt many people have ever seen, but or will ever see. It was just very cathartic to write it all down for the shit that happened with EFED's life and everything else. And once I finished writing that book, I literally like every desire to do anything about EFEDs died. I don't know why, but after I got out like the last little bit, it just was like, okay, this part of my life is completely over. Like I'm done. I've moved on. So is there chance for a Dennis comeback, or is that chapter written and out of the way too?
Oh, it's sailed. You know, I think I had the same thing with the video, right? I kept up that ruse of being, yeah, I was three people for a while. I was Kevin, Bill, and Dennis for an extended period of time, and then we just kind of wrote Bill off, like, well, Bill's not around, so let's get a real commissioner. Hey, Ash, you want to be the commissioner? Cool. I kept that up mainly, like you said, really a division of duties. Like I could always put a different hat on. Like, okay, I'm in the Kevin mindset now. I have to focus on the Fed. Like, okay, now today it's Wednesday. That's Dennis mode. I can actually just what do I want to be creative about today? What am I going to make up? Oh, I got to make a logo today for the upcoming pay per view or whatever the case may be. Doing the secrets of GWF with my homage to UHF that I bet like three people picked up on. I did that in my head. I haven't seen that video in so long time. I thought I did the crumple up paper where I did secrets of UHF.
Dude, I don't even. I'm pretty sure you did. If I remember, I think that's how it opened.
I think that's a UHF like reference, Weird Al's UHF, and I think like three people might have picked up on it. So that's awesome. It's called knowing your audience, I guess. I think doing that and finally like letting out like, listen, it was me the whole time. Hey, I've been copying matches. Hey, here's all this shit that like this drove me insane for a decade. I mean, that was it for me. Like, listen, if somebody else wants to run this, here's some passwords. I'll pay for the domain and hosting or whatever because it's not that expensive. I don't care because I just like owning that name now because it's a part of my soul.
Yeah.
But here, if you think you can run it, here's the logins. Have at it. Like you're a better person than me at this point. I've paid my dues. I'm done. As far as a time, like I just never seem to have enough time to do anything projects. By the time I'm done with work, and then dealing with the kid, and then sitting down and watching a 30-minute TV show, I'm asleep. So
yeah.
like what am I gonna find time to write a role play or a match or pretend I'm Kevin McDermott, putting on the suit and tie and charged into a ring with the Vince McMahon walk in my head. I think the idea of like, man, it'd be cool to have like everybody back for like a nostalgia, just meet and greet. Like, I think that could happen, right? I'd be okay if it was like a nostalgia GWF, virtual meeting or whatever it is, and like, here's all these people. Here's you and Ash and Vinny and what's his name from Australia, whatever. That was another Vinny. I think there were two Vinnies. I think
there was a Vinny from Australia.
He was Scott Steiner a lot. He always went back to Scott.
No, that's Vinny. That's Vinny. But I didn't think
was that the same Vinny.
I think it's the same Vinny. I don't know if that's Australia. I don't think so.
I was pretty sure it was Australia.
God, I don't remember this so many years ago.
I know, right? It just starts to blur. But like, oh wow, we all got. I mean, yes, time zones are a thing because there were people all over the place. So yeah, I think it could do that for an hour or two. But beyond that, I think putting into any effort to resurrect what is there. I think I tried to go there a month or two ago to see if the site would still work, and I think it's just beyond broken at this point. A little love you could probably get working, but it's just like there's been so many tweaks to it. It's like, man, I don't even know where to start. I don't have the effort to want to do that right now. So,
have you ever been on Web Archive?
Yes.
So I remember, I don't know how many months ago it was at this point, but I remember going on there, not in 2022 that I went on there, and was able to find some of the pages, but most of them redirect you to you have to go to before you locked it with the username and password. And if you do that, you can see some of the stuff on the site still for the web archive. But for any of the future stuff, it just even if you remember, and I remember some of the web addresses by heart, just because I had done them so much, gwfwrestling.net/results/pay-per-view/WME or WM12 for WrestleMania 12.php or whatever it was. Like, I remember those. And I remember looking some of those up and it immediately just bringing me back to the main page because you need to log in. So I have done that just because I got a little bit nostalgic. I think it's when I first started thinking about the idea of trying to get definitely you and trying to do some others. And I know Dave was upset. Dave is over in Italy right now, and he was very upset that he missed this because he wanted to just shoot the shit about GWF and shoot the shit about WWE. So we'll probably have to look at doing another one in the future, and maybe I can, because Mick and I still talk randomly. Dave and I still talk randomly. I haven't talked to Ash in a while. Aaron, who was always Snitsky, I don't know if you remember, Aaron Bolt.
No, that name sounds familiar. Yeah,
he was Snitsky for fucking ever, man. Like him, I think I have him on Facebook. I've got a bunch of people from like GWF time that I have on Facebook that it's not very often we chat, but when it is, it's usually just like, hey, how you doing type of thing. And we all sometimes reminisce about GWF stuff. I remember, I think
Sam?
Devin Bacon still.
Sam Hamblin?
Yeah, Sam Hamblin. I haven't talked to him in forever either.
I think he's on my Facebook too, but I don't remember. Like, I remember the name, but I actually can't remember details anymore. It's lost.
Yeah, and I don't remember who he used to be, but I do remember him having access to a lot of the stuff on the site because he was like one of those guys that I think you or Ash trusted to do some stuff. Because I always remember him having access to most things. I don't know if I have him on there anymore, but I did for a little bit. But I had Devin, who was Candido, and him and I used to chat during the ending days of GWF. Him and I used to chat a bit just here and there. So it would be interesting to try to get a lot of the alum back together just to have like a one-off, hey, how's everybody doing? Do you guys remember all this shit like you and I have been doing? Because this has been kind of fun. A little bit. I'm not nostalgic in the sense of, hey, let's do this again. But I'm nostalgic in the sense of that was a good time, a pain in the ass time, but it's also fond memories to look back on.
Yeah, I think that's about as far as I'd go. Because then that's the fun. You're like, oh, it's a tribute show. This is awesome. But it's not having to do with wow, I'm up till 2 a.m. trying to write something and decide between two guys who wrote two different novels. Great, I don't know.
Every match is a draw.
Yeah, everybody wins.
You get a trophy, and you get a trophy. All right, so switching away from GWF, but I will reach out to those people and see about setting up something for the future, maybe around like SummerSlam time-ish area. About just getting everybody together to shoot the shit about this. And if I let everybody know early enough, hopefully we can get everybody to come together and be able to join the meeting at the proper time. And that's me calling out Bear and Tom for being little bitches. But so if we look towards actually WWE, which is having WrestleMania, this is going to air on Monday. So WrestleMania will be like 5 days from then because it's going to be a 2-day event on Saturday and Sunday. What have you been keeping up on? Do you just hear recaps of what's going on? Are you just seeing like clips on social media type of thing? Or have you actually watched any of the programming?
I have probably seen more on Twitter than I have on TV. I'll hit the Squared Circle Reddit. I'll hit Twitter and see what's going on. And then if something intrigues me, then I'll go look. As sad as it was, I think when Bray Wyatt was coming back and kind of the teasers for that, and like, oh look, they're doing things with QR codes and there's games and there's puzzles and
that was super cool.
I'm like, okay, that intrigued me, so I kind of started paying more attention of like what's going on, and I follow what's his face Zylot Themes on Twitter, and he usually recaps like every show and every other. There's way too much wrestling on TV right now. But at least like I'll watch his kind of recaps or his thems, pronouns, pal, I guess. So that's about where I find my recaps, and then I'm like, man, I'm old. I don't know who half these people are. This is great. I finally hit that point in my life where I'm old. Awesome.
Feel like you probably hit that stage a while back. Just saying.
Sure. No, I mean, yes. If you ask my knees, yeah, that was a long time
ago. Well, I know for me, like, I basically try to watch every premium live event, aka pay-per-view, that comes on, but I do not watch Raw or SmackDown unless something like during that whole Bray Wyatt thing, I started watching it a bit just because I was very interested of what the QR codes were, what the next one would be. Obviously, it was pretty obvious it was Bray Wyatt, but I wanted to go down that rabbit hole, and pun intended there. I wanted to see where this was going to go because it was one of the most captivating things they've done in a while. Since then, it has fallen extremely flat with Bray Wyatt and everything going on with him and Uncle Howdy and all that stuff is basically awful. But everything leading up to it was great and got me more invested in it. Obviously, the Roman Reigns' character over the last like 3 years has turned into one of the best characters there's ever been, which is very surprising because there was like a 3-year span where everybody hated him because they just kept shoving him down our throats. And it's funny now because they're still shoving him down our throats and we love it because they let him turn heel and he's not acting like this goody two shoes person that just is happy to be there type of thing. He's acting like he should if he's been on this dominant of a streak for forever. Like that's how he should act. And it's one of the best characters that's been around for a very long time. Have you kept up with anything with Roman?
I was watching keeping up with the Sami Zayn storyline a bit, and I was like, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
I knew there was no good way out of that though.
There still was. They could have done Mania.
I mean, call it. I mean, do I feel weird because I've written matches for 10 years? Does that qualify me for anything? No, it doesn't. But I like to pretend it does on TV. It was one of those things where I'm like, I thought Sammy was good. I liked where that was going, and it felt like the the Daniel Bryan days of the Yes chants and everything like that, where the crowd is really directing everything. And then I'm watching, like, well, you can't have him beat him, at least not in Montreal. I mean, the crowd would go insane, but it'd be a one-time thing. And what do you get out of that? Nothing. Like, I don't know if he can be the. And where I'm going with that is like, I'm sure he could be. But what's next, right? Well, it's a rematch with Roman. Well, he can't lose that because then you make Roman look weak again. Like, all right, and now you got to reestablish what you've just built over each 3 years for his character. So you almost book this amazing angle, but there was no way out except to keep the status quo. And I think they're doing the best thing they can, and they'll teaming them with
Kevin Owens.
Owens. Steen. See, it was Steen at one point.
It was Steen.
Long time ago. Teaming with Owens and getting them, and that'll be a hot crowd moment for the tag title. So I think they did what they could there. If they would have kept the Sammy thing going, I just think I don't know if you had a good way out to put the title on him without hurting Roman.
Yeah, I don't think you did either, but it was such like an angle that kind of came out of nowhere. Like this was supposed to be like a 1 or 2 off type of thing of Sammy wanting to join the bloodline that just morphed and morphed and morphed. And then as soon as he started like getting the bloodline characters to break on camera, people fell in love with Sammy. And most people have liked Sammy since at least the WWE crowd, people that hadn't seen him as like El Generico. But the WWE crowd, when he came to NXT, like he was phenomenal. Like he was the baby face that you want every baby face to be. Him finally winning the world title, the NXT title, and then getting betrayed by Kevin Owens and all that angle that happened was just phenomenal storytelling. And then when he came to the main roster, he did his baby face thing for a while, eventually turned heel, had that actually probably, I don't know if you watched Mania last year, but he had one of the better matches, but it was against the Jackass crew. And it was just a very fun, dumb wrestling match. And that helped propel him towards this thing with Roman that then the fans just grew to like him and his character. And it felt so organic that even though the Cody Rhodes story is great, I would have loved to see them postpone the match against Sammy in Montreal and do something else there, whether it's a tag team or whether it have like a fishy ending, and then do Roman both nights, one against Cody, one against Sammy for different titles or something. Like I would have been all about that. And even if Roman loses twice, then he plans on like taking a vacation anyway, and he's, I don't want to call him a part-time champion because he put in a lot of years before this, but he's not on every show like everybody else is, which has made him more of a spectacle than I thought it would. I thought it would be more like when Brock Lesnar did it, where he only showed up like once every 3 months, where it wasn't the spectacle they thought it was going to be. He was there and he looked cool, great, but because of the character that they built for Roman, it does seem to be a bit of a spectacle when he does show up. People pay more attention to the show. But if he lost both titles then, like, I think there's a story there for when he comes back to go after both Sammy and Cody or one or the other. That's what I would have liked just because of the organic feel of it. But yeah, they painted themselves into a corner because of it. And then having this great story with Cody, you know, that I don't know if you saw any clips of it. I assume that you did, probably of Cody when he wrestled in the Hell in a Cell match where his pec was torn. That was such a great match. And all of that, or I would probably say like 95% of that injury was real. And that he was still able to do everything he did and was willing to risk all of that just to put on the match that he did is a great story to be out all those months and then come back and most likely win on Sunday when this airs. He doesn't necessarily have to win. Like they've pulled curveballs on us before, but most likely will win. That's a great story. But yeah, painting themselves in a corner with Sammy because of this organic story just feels so weird to not capitalize on something that the fans were like clamoring for. And there's been so many times where WWE has gone the other way of what fans wanted. And this felt like another time where they were going to give us what we wanted, like they did with Daniel Bryan with the Yes Movement.
I mean, listen, the only thing I was thinking is if you could pull off something like they did with when they were building the Cena Rock angles from years ago, where it was the Miz, right? I think the only reason the Miz won is because the Rock came in and Rock bottomed Cena.
Yep.
Okay, if you did something like that, where you had this other mega face that was going to start something with Roman, and he cost, so then the immediate reaction isn't, wow, Sammy beat Roman at name your event here, and the next event is the rematch and the only play without some kind of schmoz ending is for Roman to win the belt back, you know, unless it ends in a DQ or, you know, somebody interferes and knocks Roman out. Like to me, I just didn't see a good way of keeping Roman strong, because I mean, I guess that's got to be your priority, right? Because you need that heel. There really isn't too many other heels in the same vein as him right now.
I don't know if there are any.
right. So you got to keep him strong because that's your people at this point, and they had before he was a heel, loved to hate him. Like, God, go away. Just, I don't want to see you. You're not my guy. If you had um, Sammy beat him, it couldn't be clean because then
Although
that
that
kind of weakens him a
ovation,
little bit.
that ovation in Canada would have been huge, man.
Oh, it would have blown the roof off the place, of course.
Yeah.
But it would have knocked Roman down. And like he would have had, you can lose clean once, but then you'd have to come back strong. So the only option is either he's gonna lose via DQ on the rematch, and he's losing by a DQ because he's gonna beat the absolute snot out of him and leave him lying bloody pulp. But then that sets up your okay, you got to have the rubber match. You need the third one. So I don't know. Like to me, it was like it was fun to watch, and it was great to see the crowd and to feel that energy. But I just didn't. I knew they couldn't pull the trigger. Like there's just it wasn't gonna happen. Like
And they also are not a giant fan of WrestleMania main event being face versus face. They love face versus heel dynamic. Now, I think a Cody Rhodes versus Sami Zayn match headlining WrestleMania could work. Um, I think you probably need a little bit more time for a build for it to be just those two. But if they would have had Sammy win and then Roman goes away, um, like does a tribal retreat or something, and then you have Sammy versus Cody in the main event, and you have them have a hell of a barn burner, and you have one of them win clean, whoever it is. Um, which again, that's also weird because Sammy would be coming off all this momentum, and then if he loses, so Cody can have the momentum. Sammy then looks weaker than he should with only a 1 month title reign. And then Cody, if he loses, that whole story was for nothing. But for my point was, if they have a hell of a match and one of them wins, then you have Roman come out and literally just bloody them both to end the show, still looking strong, knowing that he's going after the champion and the other one just for good measure. Sets up a backlash triple threat match, sets up anything else that you potentially want to do. And that would have just felt like the organic way to go. But they've been building towards this for a while. I think they also want to try to get Roman the most main events of WrestleMania because he's creeping up there towards Hogan's numbers. I think they're trying to make that his record to have so that one, it's another thing not to have in Hogan's notch, even though they've kind of brought Hogan back sometimes, but to have somebody that has, besides for them shoving Roman down our throat, there's nothing bad about Roman. He seems to be a good guy. He battled leukemia and people loved him for it. Turned his character into one of the best characters that have been in a very long time. So if you have him have these type of records, like they have the one with the title reign right now, they have this other one that will be like WrestleMania main events. Once he main events this WrestleMania, I think it's his fifth or his sixth one total, and I think Hogan has 6 or 7. So he only needs like one more to like get up to where Hogan was. So I feel like they're pushing that too. But it was just so organic, that Sammy stuff, and his love for the bloodline was just nothing I ever saw coming. And those are the best kind of stories that are there. Everything that happened with Daniel Bryan, where he lost in like 10 seconds at WrestleMania, that then slowly turned his character into this face that the crowd just got behind because nobody believed in him, but the crowd did, and taking over that entire Raw during the Yes movement, changing all of WrestleMania so that, you know, he had to wrestle twice in one night. Like it felt like that type of moment. I understand why they couldn't pull the trigger, but it felt like that kind of moment.
I think if it would have happened in a different month, I think it would have been a different story.
Yeah.
I think it came to a head just when it had to, but just at the wrong time based on what was already happening.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know if you could, hot shot into WrestleMania. I think you kind of want to have your WrestleMania card kind of set essentially based on Rumble. But if you came in and you're like, oh yeah, here's this February pay-per-view and that's going to lead to our main event at
So they've done that a few times,
WrestleMania.
but I agree that it's usually you want the bigger build. You want that 2 month time period where at least the Royal Rumble winner is already like made his claim towards WrestleMania, already made his choice clear of what he's going to do and why. And then you usually try to have them feud for a while so it has this bigger payoff. So it's not like every other pay per view where you only have like a 1 month build. You can have like a 2 or 3 month time to really get into everything. And I feel like that's what they've been trying for the last few years. But usually the February pay per view is Elimination Chamber, and not many times do the title change hands there, but it has. And then like a new champion is okay. Now this person's going to go to WrestleMania. But when you have that hut of a story, yeah, I don't envy their position in this case. Like normally, I'm fine with bad mouthing them for what they're doing, and I hope they were going to do something different. But if I'm in their position with what they have in front of them, I don't think I would have. I think it would have been very hard to do something else, not knowing where it could go, but knowing where your current story is going to go.
Right. Yeah, it's and you always hear no matter what show you watch is that they're talking about Mania the day after Mania. They're
Yeah,
thinking about what that next thing's going to be. So you know, obviously they've changed their mind before. We've seen it a couple times, but
yeah,
sometimes they got to go with their gut. Sometimes you got to go with what you think is going to sell to a bigger crowd than maybe sell to the hardcore fan. And while Sammy would have been a great choice for the Canadian, some hardcore. I don't know if many people could name
right,
Canada.
right. Um, so I don't know if you moving away from like the two, what I think will be the two main events of the 2 nights. It should be, in my opinion, Sammy and Kevin versus the Usos night one, and then Roman versus Cody night two. Like those are the two hottest stories, clearly. Now I know there was talk about potentially Charlotte and Rhea main eventing night one, which if it happens, I feel like it's only because they're women. And there's nothing wrong with the women main eventing some of the cards, but when it's deserved, like Bianca and Sasha that main evented, like, yeah, that was a hot story and it was a fantastic match. Um, but there are other ones where if it's just going to be shoehorned in, then there's no reason. Like even the Charlotte versus, was it Sasha, and versus Ronda Rousey? No, Becky. Becky. Um, uh, like that one was a very hot story, and part of that obviously was Ronda Rousey coming in and doing her bit. Um, but like I could see that main eventing. That's fine. But the Rhea versus Charlotte story isn't really there compared to these other ones. So I'd be a little bit disappointed in them if they go that route just because it's the women there. Like I feel like it should be based off the story, not based off of this looks better for our brand or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. Like again, I have nothing against them. I don't think I'm invested in them.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never been a big Charlotte fan. Like nothing bad, nothing good. Just not my cup of tea.
Yeah.
Happens.
I will say
Um,
Rhea Ripley is on fire right now.
yeah. And I think it's like okay, I'd be interested to see her in a match, but I don't know if it has to be an event. Like
Yeah.
that's kind of what it is. Like yeah, unfortunately, they're gonna play second fiddle probably again. It's the classic women's trope is just yep, you're going on right before the main event.
Well,
That's
see,
what happens.
that's why
Sorry.
I think they might get the main event because they're trying to do away with that trope. Um, but again, at least for me, I feel if they deserve it, then yes, put them there. And it's not that they don't deserve it because of talent or anything. It's just the story isn't as good as these other stories, and it
I
has
think
been.
if you
Has been.
saw if they're gonna change the tag titles and if they're gonna put them on and Sammy and Owens, the pop for that's going to be too big, right? You can't. If that match goes before the women's match, it's WrestleMania X8 all over again, right? And I was there. I remember. We were exhausted
What
after
was
Rock Hogan.
Rock Hogan? That's what it was.
We
Yeah.
had nothing left. Nothing. We sat there for the women's match, and then we had Triple H Jericho. I'm like, I'm tired. I'm exhausted after that because it just brought you back to like you were 10 years old again. And we're chanting for Hogan, and the 10-year-old in front of us is chanting for The Rock. And it's like, holy crap, that took it all out of you. You do that to the women, if you give them that kind of lead in dead, that's not too nice to them either. Like it's just gonna be kind of like, all right, I'm coming down, but you guys do your thing. That's not fair either.
Yeah, no, not at all. Like, yeah, it's just setting them up to fail. And it's like, what was it? Was it WrestleMania 25 or 24? Whichever one it was. I think it was Undertaker and Shawn Michaels, the first one, where I think the match after it was Triple H and Randy Orton as the main event. If I'm remembering these, I could be remembering these incorrectly. But I remember them saying they thought The Undertaker should go on last, and he didn't. And then that match tore the house down, and the entire crowd was dead. Absolutely dead for a rivalry between Triple H and Randy Orton that was. It wasn't my best feud ever by any stretch, but it was a very personal feud where, like, Orton went to hit Triple H's house or vice versa, kicked open the door. There was everything with Stephanie, with handcuffing Triple H and like hunting Stephanie and then giving her a kiss. Very personal stuff that you have this big payoff match for, but you just experienced one of the greatest matches in WrestleMania history. You're not going to have anything left. So like part of that is them going like, it's the main title. It should be on the main event. It's one of the reasons I like now that we get 2 nights, because you can have this type of match where you can have this personal rivalry that doesn't need a title, that should be a main event, and then still have the main event of the next night be for the title without making either of them look weak and without setting the other one up to fail, because the crowd, as you said when you were there at WrestleMania 18, is just dead. If you're dead and you're talking about 5 or 6 hours worth of wrestling in one day, like, you're going to stop cheering at a certain point if it's not building, and instead just going build, oh my God, this is great. And now it's less. You're not going to get the ovation that you kind of want, especially at a WrestleMania.
I mean, unless they want to use the tag match as an opener. Like, if you want to kick the crowd off hot,
Yeah,
you're ready to go.
Yeah, that is a good way to go.
They're fresh on night one. Like, you want to get them into it after all the pomp and circumstance of all the intros. Okay, you're going to have somebody singing one of the American pick one that they do. You're going to have a whole bunch of celebrity kind of probably introductions and like that, and then you want to kick them off hot. You play Sammy's team, and they'll jump right up, and they'll be into that match, and then you might give them that chance to build back up over the night. Then you could end. Yeah, that could be day one for that matter.
Yeah.
Wow, yeah, look how fun we are. And then
yeah, I think that's your only choice. Like, if you're not going to put them on last, they kind of have to go on first, or otherwise you're going to bury the rest of the card. Like, at least you go on first, even though the second match after it's probably going to pay for it. It's still, as you said, like, you're going to have such a high that then you're going to have such a low that then you can slowly build to that main event again.
I mean, let's face it, right? Like, you want to put that on first? You know what match is next? Lashley Wyatt, if it ends up happening.
Or Brock versus Omos.
Sure. Either of those are just, like, meh at this point. Like, right, they both kind of fizzled. There's nothing there. Yeah, you want to have a great match, and then you want the popcorn match? Give it to one of them.
Like, yeah, that's definitely what should be done, because I can't see the Brock versus Omos match lasting more than like 7 minutes. Like I feel like it's just going to be two big guys beating each other for a second, and then I can't see Brock letting Omos go over just because there's no reason to. I don't feel like anybody likes Omos. He's not that good in the ring. He does not have a character, although that's kind of why I'm a little bit glad that he has MVP with him. Um, but it's more or less bad. Like it has to be just Brock looking dominant again to get back from losing to Lashley a couple times. Um, Bray Wyatt, like I said, has looked kind of mediocre at best since his return. Um, like his best stuff that he's done was the early promos where you weren't sure what was going to happen, and when you saw these other characters. But then it's just fizzled, and it sucks because there was such hype around it. Um, and him against and Lashley's fine for a character. I liked him more when he was in the Hurt Business, like that whole stable that they had. Thought that was great. But when he went out on his own, he's fine. Like he'll put on sometimes an entertaining match, but it depends on his dance partner. And if his dance partner is Bray Wyatt, is Bray Wyatt showing up? Is Uncle Howdy showing up? Is the Fiend showing up? I don't know.
As much as I kind of like those characters, like I said, I'm kind of an Undertaker mark, right? So I've always kind of had fun with those characters. I liked Cult Leader Bray. I was okay with Fiend Bray, but his WrestleMania matches really haven't been great. Like, there's been a couple decent, but nothing to write home about. Like nothing you did, especially that one with Randy Orton with all the bugs in the ring and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, just no.
Yeah, that was not a good one. Yeah, I was hoping for more.
So
especially
let's
for
say
that
he doesn't have a
character.
great WrestleMania pedigree at this point.
No, it's weird too because you look at a character like the Undertaker, who's very similar, kind of made his name being this. Like during his entrances during Mania were always a spectacle, for his matches at Mania. He went like obviously his first 5 or 6 were mostly just against big guys because they wanted to like have this big versus big and look, the Undertaker can beat him type of thing. But eventually it got to like having some of the best matches on the card, even though it wasn't the main event. And I felt like Bray had that chance to do, and it just hasn't worked. And I'm not sure if it's him, the dance partner he had, the story he was given, or the people that laid out the match. But it just hasn't been there, which is disappointing because it should be.
Or even presentation. I mean, you look at something like, man, how could he have a bad match with Randy Orton? But I think it's just the presentation of that match just really just takes away from the whole thing. It could have been an A1 match, but you wouldn't have known it because you were too distracted by random shit being projected in the ring.
Well, I think probably his best match isn't even a match. It's the one against John Cena. Like the Firehouse fun match.
Right, yeah.
Like that was all just during COVID, so there wasn't anything actually to in front of fans, and that was a fantastic like cinematography match for what it was, but it wasn't. It's not a match. Like people are going to remember it, but people aren't going to remember in-ring ability over that. Like it was a great story with John Cena seeing his old characters, and the whole Vince McMahon dummy was great. All that stuff was just like fantastic, but there's not much meat to it after that. Like you have to be able to perform in the ring, and Bray can perform in the ring. We've all seen it in other matches, more so when he was the Cult Leader Bray, which is still my favorite Bray, even though there was something about the Fiend that was very appealing. But that Cult Leader aspect, and then you saw all the fans start using their flashlights on their phone to turn into fireflies. It was so good, and the way he talked and acted literally felt like a cult leader. And I was like, dude, I am hooked. Let's do this. Where's the compound? I'll go live there now. You can take all my stuff. Let's do this. And I hated that they took that away from us because I just felt like it had so much legs and could easily be one of the top draws that they have, and could still be today if you reverted back to it, in my opinion.
It depends, yeah. It'd be hard to revert back because I think it's sometimes once you pass that you really can't go back. Like you've evolved to something else. I'm like, I'm not doing that anymore. Like that was a stepping stone.
Well, I think
It's
he
not.
said that himself, but I just meant like if
Oh,
that
did he?
character came back. So like if say if none of the other ones happened and he just went away or something, like that type of character that he had and the sway that he had over the crowd and the way his mannerisms were and the words that he chose to use during his promos, everything I was hooked on most of the words. Like some of them kind of a few times were like, okay, you're just repeating what you said last week. But on the new stuff that he had where he could sink his teeth into it were stuff that was just so well done. And I don't necessarily mean that he could right now revert back, but if there like that character came back and none of the other extra stuff has existed, the Uncle Howdy, the Fiend, the everything else that's happened, like you would have, I feel like a top draw. And the fact that they didn't use him at that point as the top draw, and they had a couple opportunities to do it, like they just didn't pull the trigger. They could have let him beat the Undertaker at WrestleMania after the Undertaker had already lost to Roman, or excuse me, to Brock. They could have had him beat him there and like take over that mantle because he was still that cult leader at that point. Like that could have been another passing the torch moment, but they didn't want to give him that opportunity.
I got some of it's a little snake bit too. Everything they tried was a stop and start, right? Because Rowan and he kept getting kind of hurt. I think he really didn't have. They came in as a trio, and somebody got hurt pretty early on, and they were a duo, and then they were a trio again, and they were a duo again. Then he was by himself after the draft or something. Right? You kind of had this like stop, start, stop, start. So I think you almost had to treat him like almost like how you're treating Roman now. Like he's the spectacle. If you're seeing him wrestle, wow, that's a big deal. Otherwise, he has this lack. If he's going to be a cult leader doesn't get his hands dirty. His followers should get his hands dirty, right? And I don't. I think they kind of got over. They just kind of made them a normal group. And he was wrestling and he was doing the stuff, and he wasn't really leading a cult, right? You kind of got you had this neat concept, but you never really followed it through 100%.
Yeah.
So I mean, that was the writing style. I mean, right? That's what you get, right? You get writers, and it's just mismatch of ideas, and sometimes the continuation of an actual arc doesn't really come together.
Well, it's one of the things that I was a little bit excited when Triple H took over. Granted, Vince is back at WWE now. Says he has no control or creative, but we'll see. Because he was talking about long-term storytelling. Because that is huge. Like I remember from the '90s of watching wrestling and seeing Triple H, The Rock, and Stone Cold slowly start to come up, and then you saw them feud for the IC title, and then a year, 2 years later, they're then going after the world title, but they're talking about the fact that we already did this for the IC title, and I kicked your ass then. Like having that type of storytelling, I feel like it's super important because you can always reference these things that's already happened, and you can see the arcs of these characters that have come up and down and up and down. But if you're just gonna like have something and then jump to the next thing because it didn't work 1 week, you got to give some things time to breathe. And it's funny to me the things that they decide to let breathe and the things that they decide to pull the plug on. And I feel like half the time I would just reverse those and I think they'd be fine. But like, I guess if you're in charge and that's your whim, then it is what it is.
Yeah, sometimes it's they read the crowd, and sometimes they read it wrong.
Yeah.
This is the story.
Is there a match at Mania that you're excited for out of all the ones that are on there, besides for like the two matches that we think should be the main event of Roman versus Cody and then the tag title match? Because the one that's jumping off the page to me is Edge versus Finn Balor. Not only is it a blow off match, it's also in a Hell in a Cell. And there's a lot of speculation of Finn Balor bringing back the demon persona for this match because it's going to be Hell in a Cell. So to get that entrance at WrestleMania will be quite epic.
That'll be cool. I mean, and Edge has always been he's been dipping into the old school entrances lately too, over the past couple of years. So if you see a Demon Finn Balor, I wouldn't be surprised to see the Brood Edge entrance again.
Yeah.
That he pulled out a couple times. So that would be an interesting kind of look. I was a pretty big Edge fan in the mid 2000s when he was coming up, and then he got the world title with the rated R persona.
Yep.
So that I do like Edge's stuff. I think he's held up well considering his injuries and his age. I think that's pretty good for me. So yeah, I think that'd be pretty good. I'm curious to see. So I guess if I had to choose one, I'm curious to see how Cena does coming back after this length of time. And I've never was sold on Austin Theory. Like I get it, and I'm not saying that he's a bad wrestler, but it's just again was never my cup of tea. I just didn't buy it as being the next Cena.
Oh God, no.
And I don't know if that's just how he was presented or if it was just a difference of character. So maybe there's something in the time that I missed a bit, again, being kind of lapsed and not watching every moment of every day anymore. Seeing what I did see to where it ends up now, maybe there's a little difference, and maybe we can see what people saw in Austin Theory as being the next of the young studs, I guess. You're trying to build that homegrown talent to some degree.
Right.
You were just talking about, oh yeah, you saw Rock and Triple H fight for the IC title and then fight for the world. You need that now too, right? Like,
yep.
Oh, who is your guy that's okay? He was U.S. champion not that long ago. Still is, maybe still is. I forget. Okay.
Yeah, he's the U.S. champion right now. I think the match is for the U.S. title at WrestleMania.
So here's a guy that's working his way through those progressions. Granted, it's against now somebody who's, I'll say, semi-retired, right? At least, not a main eventer anymore, but it's something.
Yeah, I still think he loses though. Like honestly,
I don't think there's a way you send the crowd home with the Cena losing.
I think Cena wins and then comes out on Raw on Monday and does like that open challenge that he used to do, and loses to some returning superstar or a debuting superstar, whoever that is. Who knows? But that's kind of what I see happening.
There's those two NXT guys that are supposed to come up soon, right? Steiner's kid and
Braun Breaker. Yeah. There's also the possibility of signing Jay White, but I don't know if that's going to happen or not. But that's what it seems like to me, because I can't see them putting Austin Theory over, and Cena's not going to stay around with the title. So the best you could have just a 2-day thing. The crowd goes home happy that Austin Theory lost and Cena won, and then you get another huge moment on Raw where Cena loses the title to an open challenge to either an upcoming NXT person, to a returning superstar, or to a debuting superstar.
Or do you shot it back and pull one of them, late 90s, early 2000s title switches where it's only switched for a day? How many times did that happen with the IC title back when between Jarrett and Edge?
Yeah, and I also remember the WWE title, Austin versus Kane in a First Blood match. Yep. Austin loses it, comes out the next night on Raw, wins it back. So there's definitely been
they've gotten away from that a bit.
Yes.
But yeah, you never know. It's WrestleMania weekend, anything goes.
Man, you still give the crowd something at Mania to cheer for, and then the Monday night crowd is always the crazy crowd. So you give them something to boo to high heaven too, if you do end up going back to Austin Theory. Yeah.
I can see it happening. It wouldn't surprise me.
I know we talked about the Charlotte Flair and Rhea Ripley, and both of us, Charlotte Flair's okay. I think she has the ability to put on great matches, but it all depends on who she's wrestling. Rhea Ripley has been killing it right now with everything she's doing with Dominic and Judgment Day, and just her in-ring ability and her look is fantastic. I still don't think they have the story for like a main event, but for me, I think I'm more looking forward to Bianca versus Asuka, and it's probably mostly, and it's going to be weird to say this, is because of Asuka. And I've liked Asuka since NXT days, but I didn't feel like her character was. I felt like she needed something more, and I still remember some of her stuff from Japan, and now that seemed to be what she's brought in during this latest run with her, with kind of like bringing that kind of character back and being more heel, and seems to be like the perfect foil for Bianca. So I think in doing so, like those two can put together a good match. It won't be probably on the same caliber as Sasha versus Bianca, like that level of a match, but it should still be a great match and it should be a great showing. Like it should, like Oscar, Bianca's had her time with the title. It should probably go to Asuka now, with this character that she's got. So, but I'm more interested in that woman's match than the other one.
No, I mean, I haven't watched much of it, especially lately, of Asuka stuff. I remember the WrestleMania match from a couple of years back, or last year or the year before. Anyway, that's probably my experience with her matches there. But I know she can go.
Yeah,
And definitely, I've seen more Bianca stuff than I probably Asuka, and I know she can go. So I think you have something there that I think that could rival a men's match if I had to kind of think about it in that perspective. I think there's nothing against Charlotte Flair's matches. I think they are definitely like her dad's, where they're slow and they're building and they're methodical, and that is fine. But I think when you think of, I don't want to say new school, but when you think of the current age of wrestling, where it's not just what you can do, but it's also just the talent you show, I think you'll see it more in the other match.
yeah. Yeah, I think that's accurate. And then I also have a fear that they're going to do what they did before and just put Charlotte over. So that's always in the back
Sure.
of my mind.
I mean, she came back and won the title in her first night back, right? I mean, isn't that what
Yeah,
happened? And
yeah, I definitely I have the fear of the whole Charlotte thing. So we'll see what they do with it. Um, the Trish return is a little bit interesting in a 6-man tag match. Like that for me, I wasn't really expecting that both Trish and Lita to come back for a match. I mean, it is Mania, and that's what they've done. But I thought Trish's last match that she said was going to be her last match against Charlotte at like SummerSlam or something. So I thought she was done and like closed the book on this. So I was surprised to see her come back.
I'm now granted they're from my era. I'm like, oh, cool, this will be fun to see, but it's not a Legends match, right? Like
Right.
I think that's kind of my concern is that, and I don't know where Trish and Lita are at today as far as talent level, but you're going against three that have a lot of talent today
Yeah.
and are considerably younger on top of that. Yes, Becky could probably carry the team and then hot tag, and then you're going to
That's
do
what I'm
something
thinking it's
quick with
gonna
Lita
be.
and don't like don't expose the legends at this point. Like, okay, let Lita do a twist of fate, let her do a moonsault, let Trish get her finisher off. I don't know if it had a name, Stratisfaction or whatever it was.
Yeah. And the chick kit.
Great. Yeah, there you go. That's the other one. Like, but don't make them wrestle against the others. I mean, I'm sure they could carry them to some degree, but we've seen enough Legends matches lately where it's just, yes, you can tell they are legends, and
Yeah.
they're just, it's time has passed them by. I mean, look at the story of Undertaker. I know traditionally are not Undertaker age, but you can see with time and especially being away from the ring, you can't get back into shape that fast. Like you're going to be off a step. That's fine, but don't make them carry anything. That's
Right. Yeah, That's definitely a thought that I have, because most of the time when they book these matches, it's usually like 1 to 3 months out, like for Mania anyway, for like something like this, and that's it's a if you think about it, you're like, oh, I've got 3 months to train and get back in ring shape, and that sounds fine. But there's a difference between getting in ring shape and going out every single night and having a match, putting those welts and bruises and time on your body so that when you're in the ring and you get hit or fall or whatever you do, it's like riding a bike, so to speak, where then you know exactly where to go and where to move and how to handle anything that happens, rather than being like, okay, I'm in ring shape and I can do this and that. All right, let's try this, and then the moves look a little bit slower or a little bit different, and then yeah, you're kind of exposing them for being legends. And I know part of WrestleMania is bringing in these old legends to boost up sales and to boost up viewership and all that stuff. So I get it, but yeah, there should be other ways to potentially do it, and I think that's one of the reasons why it's a six woman tag, so that you have the ability to knock one of them out of the ring real quick, keep Becky in the ring, do a hot tag for the other one, and then the other one comes back from being knocked out of the ring. And then I think you have that ability more so than if you had like a singles match. Like when Trish had her singles match against Charlotte a few years ago, like I feel like Trish spent months in the gym preparing for it because she knew it was coming. Probably spent some time at the Performance Center with indie, or not indie wrestlers, but the NXT crowd, getting ready and moving around, and then potentially even bringing like Charlotte up or her going down to Charlotte and working on the match together, actually in the ring, so that it looked better. It still didn't look great compared to what Trish used to look like, but it was a pretty good match. And now you have these two coming off of, you know, like, hey, we're going to do a 6 woman tag, or hey, we're going to do this. Kind of put you in the position of, you know, are they gonna look okay and what we remember, or is it literally just they wanted a name on the marquee?
Yeah, I mean, this could be like your day 2 opener, right? Like,
Yeah,
you open, hey, that's Lita's music. Oh, crowds popped. Good, here we go. Like,
yeah.
that's how you open a second date. I mean,
And then
might be worth a shot.
they've added in those other tag matches, which they're calling showcase matches, which I hate that they're doing, because I wish they would just have better stories for everybody to have more matches. They're having Braun Strowman and Ricochet versus Street Profits versus Alpha Academy versus Viking Raiders, which is just a nothing match. It's not even for like the number one contendership for the titles. So like it's just a match to showcase them, to put them on the card. And then they're having Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez versus 3 teams that aren't announced yet, even though the card's in like a week. So it feels really weird to have those. I would have rather had the Mae Young Battle Royal and the Andre the Giant Battle Royal. Like I would have rather at least had those, because we've already had them in the past, rather than have these random tag matches that mean nothing. At least they used to get trophies for the battle royals, even though it meant nothing. It didn't push them along in the card. It was just a match, but at least they got a trophy for it. Like these matches will do nothing for anybody. Now they could be okay because they're supposed to be like fatal 4 ways. So I think that technically means 4 of them are in the ring at the same time. Um, that's that's the idea, I think, right? Isn't that what that's what a fatal 4 is supposed to be? It's 4 people in the ring.
In the singles match, the arena, yes.
Yeah. I mean, for the tag, I feel like that's what it should be, because that would be more entertaining. So they have the possibility to be decent matches, but there's no story there. We're not getting anything out of it. And to me, WrestleMania isn't the time to just throw random people on. Like everything should have a story. This is your biggest show, and these stories don't work for me. Similar to the Brock Omos story, and then if they do the Bray and Lashley, also the stories are shit. Like there's so many stories on this card that are great. Edge Balor, it have had a story for if not like the last year. Rhea and Charlotte, I'm sure they have the past history because they've already done the WrestleMania match before when Charlotte won and challenged Rhea for the NXT title. They already have that story, and then Rhea is just, like I said, killing it right now. Bianca and Asuka have their story that they're doing. Then obviously everything with what we feel are the two main events, like their stories are phenomenal. So then when you compare them to these other matches that just look thrown on the card, like it always annoyed me. It's one of the things, and I know we stopped talking about Efeds, but I'm going to go back to it real quick. When people just wanted to have matches, like for the sake of having matches on like a pay-per-view or something that we were doing, it was like, no, it has to mean something. Like it's a pay-per-view for a reason. Granted, no one was actually paying money for it, but like if you're on this type of card, like this type of level, there has to be some type of story behind it or some reason that you're on this show. Otherwise, you can just go to a weekly event, Raw or Thunder, and great, have your match and let's move on from there. But for having this big level event, there shouldn't be just these random people here just because.
Right. Or we did for a while. We did the whole Sunday Night Heat concept.
Yep.
Where it's like, all right, you're going to be on here, but it's going to be really brief. Like you don't get like a full write up. You get the highlight. Sorry.
I don't even remember if there was a highlight. I thought it just said this person defeated this person.
It might have been that to that level too. Like, I thought for a while we were like writing off the finish, but that's about it.
Well, I do remember there was always some on the cards, and I always felt like those were the matches that didn't get written. That was always ... and then the finish. Like I still remember that.
Right.
Yeah. So the only other match that I don't think we've talked about is a match that definitely has a chance to steal the entire show, which is Gunther, Drew McIntyre, and Sheamus. And I don't know if you caught any of the clips from Gunther versus Sheamus at like Clash of the Titans or whatever they called that event. No, Clash of the Castle. From back in, I think it was September. And those two people put on like match of the year. Like it was brutal, and it was two like massive guys that were very stiff with each other. And Gunther is known for being stiff, but usually in a safe way, it just means you're going to get beat up. And then you're going to add Drew McIntyre into it, who since his return to WWE is like a big powerhouse. They definitely have the ability to be easily the hardest hitting match of the entire show. And then potentially one of the best. Just because if they keep the level of realism that Gunther has shown through many of his matches, and you have three of them just beating the living shit out of each other, I feel like you're going to have a lot of people go, holy crap, like wrestling's fake, but dude, like you need to go get checked out at the hospital because you might have a concussion, a broken nose, a broken jaw, something.
Yeah, I haven't seen much. I mean, I knew he was Walter, and then they changed his name.
Yeah.
I can't say that I've seen a lot of his work, but I knew he was supposed to be somebody to watch. So yeah, I mean, I think that'll be WrestleMania, and I guess it's kind of like I'm like the twice a year Christian, but with wrestling. You know, they call that Easter and Christmas, right? That's your Christian thing. But me, I'm kind of like, okay, WrestleMania and the Rumble, and then maybe if I'm feeling it, SummerSlam or Survivor Series or something that tickles my fancy. But usually Rumble and Mania, I'll watch pretty much straight through. So yeah, this will be something to see if it's you're not going to get all the flippy moves or anything crazy that's going on in something else, but you're gonna get a fight. That's for damn sure.
Yeah, and not a fight that you don't like. For me, when Brock Lesnar always has those fights with the Drew McIntyre, with Goldberg, with Bobby Lashley, it's not that they don't necessarily. I mean, it's wrestling, so it's not real, but the level of realism there, because it's almost the same stuff every single time, isn't really like, it doesn't connect for me anymore. And watching Gunther, watching Sheamus, and watching Drew. I'm less of Drew, at least currently, but especially those two of Sheamus and Gunther, it's just like, yeah, I wrestling tries not to do receipts anymore, but I feel like that's all the entire match is. They're waiting for one of them to accidentally hit the other, and then they're going, screw it. Guess we're just gonna punch each other in the face and in the chest right now and try to make this look like a wrestling match. And like that's the level of realism those type of matches have given, compared to other ones, which are, you could definitely tell are more choreographed. Definitely tell that you're trying to protect the other one because obviously you are. But that level of realism, I don't think every match should be like that. But when they happen with a character that you believe, it just adds that much more to it. Like especially for me, my enjoyability of watching it, because I'm a huge into UFC. Like I'm big into UFC. Like that's replaced wrestling for me, of just loving UFC and guys punch each other in the face and the fact that it's real. So then when I look at wrestling, which is still always going to be like a childhood love of mine, that when I have a fight like that in front of me, it's like, damn, like that's kind of what I want in the UFC too. Like they're just beating the shit out of each other. And I know they're like I said, more or less taking care of each other, but it doesn't look like it.
Yeah, I think it depends on how much time they give them too. So I think that's a concern.
Yeah.
WrestleMania being what it is. Granted, 2 days helps that out a little bit, but
Yeah.
there's always stuff going on.
They need to stop the
So
music performances. They need to stop all that shit. Just get to the show, get to the wrestling. Like sometimes you can have like a segment like that Austin McFoley. Oh, I don't remember who the other person was in that segment, but that was good. The Austin Rock Hogan segment was really good. Like you're gonna have things like that which can pop the crowd, but at a certain point, just let it go. Let's go to the matches. That's why we're all here.
yeah, so I think that's the thing. If you rush that match, it might not come off as well. But if you give them a bit of time, then I think you'll see what those guys can do.
Yeah, and especially with you not seeing anything, I'll be interested in your thoughts, and I may just even just shoot you a separate email after Mania and be like, "What did you think?" Or I'll be like, "Hey, I take back what I said. This match sucked." One of those two emails will happen. Um, so as we wrap this up, what are your closing thoughts WrestleMania wise? Are you excited for it? Will you be watching it live like as it happens, or you're gonna watch it at a later point?
I'll probably see some of it live, but I don't know if I'll make it to the end of the night live. But then I usually watch it in full after the fact. So in the past couple years, I've seen it. I've started watching it on like Monday. Like I kind of know what happens. I mean, it takes the fun out of it, but okay, I'm gonna watch it start to finish on Monday and day one, and then maybe day two on Tuesday, or might I think the 2020 version took me about 4 or 5 days to get through. Uh, like I gotta stop and pick it up later.
Yeah.
Uh, so it's kind of one of those things that I like being able to just kind of pause it and walk away now. I guess I'm kind of spoiled in that aspect. But if I'm home, which I usually am, and I have nothing else on, I'll probably toss it on and see how long I make it. Maybe the Saturday night one I could stay up a little bit later because usually I could make it later on Saturday night. But
Yeah.
weekday mornings come pretty quick, so we'll see how late I can make it up there. As far as excited, that's tough to say. I don't think I can't say that I've been super excited with wrestling in a while. As far as like any anticipation, like I'll watch it just to get away, and it's an enjoyment, and I take it for what it is in that moment. But I can't say like I've ever been looking forward to something. I think we were talking earlier, like I want to see Bray Wyatt's return. That would be cool. And then yeah, it was cool for the first day or two, and then it kind of fizzled out. Meh, right? And there's I think part of me even likes some of the Hall of Fame stuff more now. because it's my era now. I think
Isn't
I
that
watched a
so
lot more.
sad?
I know that's the saddest part.
They're like,
It's
hey,
just like,
these are the guys I grew up with. Wait, you're in the Hall of Fame? Oh, damn it.
I mean, like, I could still picture sitting up at Bill's house watching the debut of the Undertaker. I'm like, son of a, now I'm just that old. Holy crap! Like I remember watching like when Angle was inducted and watching that. It's like just some of the stuff they talk about, and like, man, this is fun to listen to, and this the stuff they reminisce about. And I think I've looked more toward the Hall of Fame stuff than I have the actual event. Not that there's anything to take away from the event, but I don't know if there's anything that just stands out to be like, oh God, that's going to be awesome. Because it's just, all right, I might know one half of the people, or I might know the other half, or I know a couple legends that are in this match. But I guess I'm not ingrained with, I didn't watch Ring of Honor when it was on TV all the time. So now these guys are something, and okay, yeah, no, I don't have the emotional connection that I once did to the wrestler. Like, man, that's Triple H's music. Oh boy, here we go. Or that's there's a no, like
Yeah.
whatever. Like,
Well, I definitely understand that about the Hall of Fame stuff, just because you do have that emotional connection to those characters that are now being inducted. So then when they start talking about, they start reminiscing or telling secrets, so to speak, like behind the scenes that you didn't know, you're super interested in it, and you're like, okay, cool. Or they start talking about a feud or a match that you remember and have like a memory, as you said, that you were at Bill's house when the Undertaker debuted. You could have these memories of these people doing certain things. Like I remember the Triple H, The Rock ladder match at SummerSlam, like 96 or 97, whatever year it was. I know exactly where I was and how many people were in the room during this match. I remember that towards the main event of that event that the cable went out. And I remember the friend's mom getting on the phone and yelling at the cable company and all this other stuff. Like I remember all of that. Like there's certain moments that are ingrained in me. So anytime the Triple H or the Rock talk about that ladder match, it's the first thing that I think about because I'm attached to that moment. And I agree, there's not many moments nowadays, and it's probably because we're older and adults and just old fogies, that you're not attached to these certain moments. You try to be, but it's different.
yeah, I remember watching a couple of years, like, watching the 2021. I was like, oh, here they're gonna put on a WrestleMania despite the chaos that's happening right now. Sweet, and then watching something like Taker versus Styles, and it was like, that was cool.
Yeah, it was.
Again, did I feel like any kind of connection to it? Not really. It felt like a TV show to me. Like, okay, I'm watching this just to be entertained, but I'm not gonna walk away from it having some kind of experience. It's just like it's a thing, and I think that's kind of come forward, through the remaining years. Like, oh, I'm watching it. Oh, wow, that was cool. Oh, that was cool. And that's about where it goes. Like, I can't think of moments that are sticking with me anymore. That and that's like you said, that's becoming an adult. Like, yeah, there's other things that just push that right on through. There's not enough room in the brain to hold it all.
Well, it's
So
also, I think, less things are special to us now just because we've experienced so much that when we were kids, and that's why some of those memories stick with us, is because nothing at the time was overly special. So when you saw something overly special, and for both of us, wrestling wise, like you see something, you're like, oh, that's cool. That's going to remain with me forever. The Mick Foley being thrown off the Hell in a Cell type of moment is going to stick with me forever to remember me saying and not being allowed to say because I was very young at the time. Holy shit, you know. Moments like that are always going to stick with me. That because I've experienced so much in my life, that these things aren't having that same type of effect where there's no reason to stick because it's not really a holy shit moment just because I've seen so much. But kids that are growing up that like wrestling are probably still having those moments with these people that in 20 or 30 years, if they're doing a podcast, they'll be like, yeah, this stuff's not really connecting with me anymore.
yeah, I mean I could think the last thing I was like, even Bray Wyatt's turn. I remember Punk coming back to AEW, just watching that
Yep.
first night, and being like, I mean, I liked CM Punk. I was a CM Punk fan during that run. I don't think I have any connection to him otherwise, but I think you're feeling that crowd, that the Chicago home crowd, and it was insane. And you're actually feeling it. You're like, okay, this is just cool. Like,
Yep.
was there anything special about him debuting in AEW? No, no. And I actually probably can't remember most of it, but just that few moments of cult of personality hitting, and then the crowd just going bananas. You're like, oh, that's fun. Like
Yeah.
that's a good moment, but it doesn't stick as much as it would have when he beat Cena and ran off with the belt. Like, that was a cool moment.
Well, that was
Now,
a good moment. Summer of
you
Punk,
know,
man.
that's you could talk about what happened after, and till the cows come home. But that moment of he's in Chicago and he just won and he just took the belt through the crowd and he's gone. You're like, hey, that was a pretty cool moment. Like, all right,
Yeah. It was
that.
a great match too. Like, great match, great finish, great character work by both CM Punk, by Cena, even by Vince, who didn't want the title to leave because CM Punk had said over and over his contract expires and he's getting the hell out of there. Granted, nobody knew, but he had just re-signed a contract that night, like right before going live, I think, on the air. But with that match, there was a story there and there was everything. So you have that moment, and it's very hard to recreate that. But that's definitely a moment, and we were both older by that point. But that's one of the few moments too that is going to stick with me. But that was more about the story in place, and I don't know if these stories nowadays just aren't latching on to me, or maybe it's because I'm not watching it religiously like I used to, like Monday and Friday or Thursday, whatever day SmackDown changed to be on. Like, that's what I did, like, for so many years. And now, like I said, it's basically the pay-per-views, and if I miss one, I go, all right, whatever.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's even I could think, if you missed a pay-per-view, when were you going to watch it again? You had
Yeah.
to wait for the DVD, or you had to buy the replay on pay-per-view. Everything's streaming now. I could wait and watch it Monday morning in its entirety,
Yep.
because that's how the world works. So there is a little bit of a different thing there, but I think, do any of these matches scream to me? The closest one, I guess, would be Roman and
Cody.
Cody. There you go. I was gonna say what's his face, but that's the word. Um, that's about the only one that has that build, because it's been building since he came back, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you got the Rumble win, you had the things for there. Yeah, granted, Roman had the Sammy storyline in the middle there, but okay, this is the only one that has kind of anything. Like, if he won, if Cody wins, like, there's actually something behind that. It's he's dedicating that to Dusty. Like, okay,
Yep.
there's something else to that. Does any of these, if Cena beats Austin Theory and wins the U.S. title, does that mean anything?
No, not at least not for us. I'm sure it probably means something for like the Cena fans out there, or the Cena kid fans that are still Cena fans. Um, but yeah, not for us. Like, I think the only matches that really have significance, like, I want to say Edge versus Finn Balor, but it doesn't really have significance in the sense of meaning something long term. Um, because it should be a hell of a match, Hell in a Cell. It's a good blow off to their feud, but it's not actually going to mean something in like the long term of everything. The only,
I mean, unless that's Edge's last match. Like, if he wants to call it after that, then maybe that's a different story.
sure.
Maybe you start remembering, like, oh, that was a great match and it was his last one. Like, but I don't know that.
It sounds like he still has like another year left in him, so I don't think it will be. But you never know. I thought he had more time in the tank last time when he wrestled Alberto Del Rio and won the title, and then came out on Raw and retired because of his neck. Um, so maybe there's another one of those moments where then he goes away again. Possible. But for what I know, like, it really doesn't mean anything. It, like I said, should still be a decent match. But the only one that really means a lot is probably the Cody versus Roman. And then secondary to that is probably Sammy and Kevin versus the Usos. Like those are the only two that I feel like really mean something, and most of that is just the story. Like they're just top tier stuff with Sammy versus the Uso stuff. Kevin, who's been interjecting constantly, and then obviously Sammy and Kevin with Roman, that whole story, and then you add in the Cody part of it of coming back to WWE after all these years away, having this different character, having a great entrance theme too, which definitely helps compared to like Stardust theme, where he, tore the house down with Seth Rollins last WrestleMania and probably stole the show, had the best match of the night. To then the Hell in a Cell match, which was probably the best match of the night as well, to getting like out and injured and needing surgery, to Royal Rumble and winning it. He won it. It was okay. It wasn't a great Rumble. It was an okay one. But all of his promos since then have been phenomenal. Like talking about doing this for Dusty, but also not wanting to harp on that too much. And then Roman starting to harp on it, and him being like, I'm so sick of everybody talking about my dad. Like, my dad's not going to walk out of the grave and be there on Sunday. My brother's working at another company. He's not going to be there Sunday. It's just going to be me. Like certain stuff like that has really added to the program. And Cody has shown that he can cut a promo nowadays compared to what he used to be able to do back when he was in like Legacy with Randy Orton and Ted DiBiase, or back when he was Stardust. Like those promos were whatever, but now like he can cut a good promo and people are like hanging on every word type of thing, which is very similar to Roman, just with different cadence.
Yeah, I think they're playing a bit well off each other, and you could definitely feel it. I saw a couple promos, these clips of, and you kind of have it. It felt like that whole Cena Rock thing where they kind of started to blur the lines of like reality and TV. It started to hit like home with some of their lines. Like, okay, that's what it takes. Sometimes you need to make that happen.
Yep. I don't like when they do that overly, but when they can do it sometimes where it feels like it's unexpected. Like I remember the Rock Cena, the one where Cena called him out for having notes on his wrist because the Rock hadn't cut a promo in forever. Shit like that set the Rock off, which was good because the next promo the Rock did a lot better. But like things like that you can do. Like I remember Roman said that like he took his ball and he always runs away, and he started another company and he did this because he couldn't get over in this company and yada yada. Like moments like that where it talks about the realism part where there is some truth to it. Where I'm sure there are some promo stuff written down, but I'm just hoping they're letting them go out there and do it because it does seem more natural than some of the old promos of the last few years.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you just gotta let them do what they're growing up doing, especially when you got your two top guys. Just let them go.
Yeah. Well, we have WrestleMania this weekend, night 1 and night 2, so we'll be watching that. Me while it airs. Dennis probably a few days later. I'll be messaging him to see what he thinks about it. But we're gonna wrap up the podcast. Dennis, thank you for joining me. It was good to actually meet you face to face, even though it's not in person. It's been years since we've talked at all, and it's been years since we dealt with each other like weekly or monthly or whatever it was for the whole GWF thing. But it was really good shooting the shit for the last couple hours.
Yeah, it was a good time. I liked it. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, I will try to get like a GWF alum podcast together because that could definitely be fun with some blast from the past names. I'll cast a wide net and see what we come up with, maybe around like SummerSlam time.
Yeah, I'd be in.
All right. So that's where we're gonna end it. Next week it'll be back to the normal podcast with Corey and Mike back. We're finally going to be talking about The Last of Us. I don't know if you've watched that show, Dennis, but you should watch the show. It's great. It's on HBO. Phenomenal show.
It's on my watch list. I haven't got there yet, though.
Okay. Well, watch the show and then eventually come back to the podcast because we're going to be talking about it because we've all watched it.